Hi everyone, today we'll be talking about this Omi robot coming from Asus. I'm just kidding. Well, this is just a token of appreciation thanks to Asus to have provided this two figurine for me to keep. Now for today's highlight, I'll be talking about this board which is known as the ROG Crosshair X870E Dark Hero. Now in general, the word hero, the title is being earned and it's not through fame or through being popular, just like this board. And I believe why Asus have named this as Dark Hero is there are lots of hidden goodies on this board which I'm going to talk about, and it's an honor for me to present this board. In fact, I'm excited about this board. With this said, I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this board for me to share with everyone. First off, when you do the unboxing, under this hood, protected by this, you have the main board, and on the main board itself, right, it's being protected by this foam. Nicely done, which I will talk about it later. Now at the top of the cover, you have all this instruction explaining to you how to do the M.2 release button and such, which is toolless, and how you remove off the graphic card and such. Now right at the bottom, okay, there's this lever over here. When you pull out, this is the accessory box. Okay, I wish I can show you the full thing. See, this is the accessory box, which you can slide out. And in this box, okay, let me just close this properly. So you are split with different sections. Starting off with the top, this is the Wi-Fi antenna. Then over at this section, when I pull this out, okay, the VIP card and such, membership card, okay, they are not in position. Hopefully I won't drop them. Oh, okay, it's being mixed up. Okay, let me just take this off. Oh, you have a bottle opener, and the other, I believe, is the VIP card. See, the membership card. And right below, you have a leaflet. Oh, okay, leaflet of stickers. I believe these are the CMOS factory stickers and such. A quick installation guide. The web storage from Asus. So I'm just going to place this back. Now over at this section over here, these are all the bags of goodies which I will go through with you later. I'll put this one side, and this box over here, more goodies which I'll talk about. Nice. There are tons of small bags. Starting off with my left, you'll be provided with SATA cable, total of 4, 2 which is straight and 2 which is right angle. Then right at the top, additional thermal pad. I believe this is for the M.2, and this is just a fan. I believe this is the fan for your RAMs, as there is this, yep, fan holder. Yep, that's right, listed over here. This is the additional, if you want to overclock your RAMs, right, you can plug this fan, okay, to cool your cool your RAMs. Nice thought. The Q connector, this is where you plug your case headers, right, the front headers like the power button, the reset switch and such. It's all labeled over here. So you plug it to here, you plug it to here, and on the other end, right, you can just one plug to the motherboard. And all these bags over here, these are the M.2 clips, which you will see later. Then all these bags are rubber studs for the M.2. Total of 5. For your info, this is going to be a very lengthy content, and I have split into timestamp. If you want to skip and have a look at the feature sets, the thermal results, and the functions that I talk about, right, you can just go according to the timestamp. With this said, for those of you who want to listen throughout, have a cup of coffee and tea. And here we go. Now with me, I have both boards. And why am I highlighting both boards? Based on the fact that I just want to tell you what are the improvement and what have been done and such. Now this is the original X870 Crosshair Hero, else this is the revised version which I will be highlighting today. Now what's the difference? In fact, both are of the same quality structure, which is 8-layer PCB and of 8-ounce copper traces, and all the connection point, right, is identical with some changes. And besides this, right, the structure of it is also slightly different, inclusive of the aesthetic. As you can see, the aesthetic is different. Now coming to the structure, ASUS have listened to all the listeners, I mean the viewers out there, comments and such, based on the fact that some of you might face problem mounting big liquid cooler block to the original, as this is pretty narrow. So what ASUS have done is that they have widened the gap. As you can see here, right, comparing the revised version and the original, the M.2 spacing, or should I say they have lowered down the M.2 on the revised version, so giving you more gap for you to plug a big liquid cooler, inclusive of air cooler, more space. Now why air cooler has more space, as in, like, you know, you're more concerned about this than this. If you were to notice the DIMM slot, okay, the original is widely spread, so giving it narrower space. Else for the revised version, see, this is much narrower, so you have more space, so you wouldn't have a problem mounting a very large air cooler. Now besides this, okay, let me just adjust this. Based on the fact that I'm not looking at the camera, that's why I use this and to adjust so you can see the whole thing. Now besides this, right, the design of it, both having the rear I/O with this panel to show the ARGB effect, okay, this is slightly bigger and has better, I mean the hologram. The only thing that I wish ASUS can do is that to have this as a LCD panel, so that you will, you know, show the stats and such. Okay, I'm just irritated with all the fingerprints. Another thing is that ASUS should provide, you know, a microfiber cloth to clean the surface. Now, as mentioned to you, it's best that they can actually do this as a LCD panel, whereby it shows you all the stats. You can customize the stats and such. It's much more practical, besides having the aesthetic. Now, besides this, right, looking at the structure and design of the M.2, see, this is just a logo, or should I say the wording, right, stamped onto the M.2. Okay, take a look. See, else for the Dark Hero, this is cut as in, like, you know, cutting the logo. Okay, probably I show you. See, nicely done. The attention to details. Not only this, it does has a vapor chamber. And speaking about the vapor chamber, right, look at the amount of heat dissipation on this block is so massive compared to the original. And for the original, right, you do have this fin stack over here to help the dissipation, but they have improved on it. Besides the vapor chamber pipe, all these vents, right, okay, at this side and at this side, in fact, it's a V-shaped fin stack. This will dissipate even much more heat. And when I test this, I mean running the benchmark, the M.2 surprisingly is running very cool. And mind you, I'm using a Gen 5 M.2, so it didn't hit above 51 or 55 degrees Celsius. In fact, it's lower, around 37 to 41 on the controller, and for the NAND, right, it's about 43 to 45, around there. Superb cooling. And not only this, the architecture, or should I say the mechanism on the lower M.2 heatsink. Now, this, in order for you to remove, right, you got to make use of a screwdriver to unscrew. For this, right, the revised version is just a plug and play. Easy release mechanism, and you can pull it out. And best part is that this is as chunky as this. Best part is the design of it. See, these are CNC cutting. It's not like this where they just, you know, imprint the crest on the plate itself. This is seriously cutting more into details, and the crest itself is embedded. These are all cut, chrome cut nicely. So it make the function pretty good. It's only a, you know, plug and play situation. Nice design. Now, coming to the VRM heatsink. When I did a review on this, right, I'm really impressed with the VRM heatsink at the side and at the rear, based on the fact that it is very chunky. Plus, it has all this pin stack to dissipate more heat. And on top of which, right, it does have this, the chamber pipe, okay, that links the the side to the rear. And on top of which, right, there is a back plate. And this back plate, they do have the thermal pad on the VRM to cool down. Even here, probably here you can't see, but you can see over here, see. So to cool the VRM more using the back plate. So this is very, very impressive. And when you come to the main unit, it's even more impressive. Now at first I was skeptic because this is actually pretty chunky. It doesn't have fin stack, but it fins this way, inclusive of the chamber pipe with the rear chunky VRM heatsink. And of course, okay, just to show you, this is the back plate. Now, tons of finger pin. As I mentioned, I wish that, you know, Asus should have provided a microfiber cloth for me to clean. Anyway, this is the design, and it does have the thermal pad in between the VRM heatsink, the VRM and the base plate or back plate. So when this is before testing, right, I was kind of like skeptic about the chunkiness on the VRM heatsink, but when I tested, whew, I am shocked again. Very well done heatsink. It does cool off my VRM very sufficiently. And I believe that if you want to overclock with this board, right, it will exceed much more compared to the previous version. So these are the things that I truly enjoy what they have done. Now, I will focus more on the main board right now. Okay, let me just put this one side. Okay, don't drop. Now, for the power face of this motherboard, okay, I'm so sorry, I just can't stand the finger pins on the plate itself. I'm just agitated. Probably it's just my, you know, my take on this. Alright, now for the VRM power face, solid. You not only can tank a high-end processor up to a 9950X3D, okay, you can even overclock it sufficiently based on the fact that the power face is 20 plus 2 plus 2. 20, which is to provide current to your processor, plus 2. The first plus 2 is the SOC voltage between your RAMs and the processor, and the last plus 2, which is meant for the rest of the component. And all this, right, the 20 plus 2 is of 110 ampere. Also, the miscellaneous plus 2 is 80 ampere. So it is more than enough to cater a high-end processor, as mentioned, and you can totally overclock it, not a problem. At ease, in fact, due to the fact not only the power face is strong, the cooling is sufficient, and the space out is real good. As you can actually witness, right, later on when you check out on the benchmark test that I've done, right, you will witness everything out. Okay, now at this section, this is the 1718 socket. Okay, this is how it looks like. Alright, now this do support 9000 series, 8000 series and 7000 series AMD processor. And right at the bottom of the socket, right, you have this Pogo pin here. And what does this do? Asus have invented a new liquid AIO that allows you to do plug and play. Now, as you know, right, when you are owning a liquid cooler, you will need to connect the fan headers of your radiator fans, your pump header, on the pump itself. And if it's LCD control, right, you have a additional USB cable to connect to the bottom USB 2.0 port. But with this design over here, right, the Pogo pin, right, instead of having to connect all this connection, right, the block itself that's designed from Asus, you can just plug and it will just run all the radial fan control, the RPM, the pump RPM, and the LCD or even the ARGB effect, right, is controlled by this Pogo pin. So it makes the installation very clean and less off with all the cable mess that you're going to feather. Nicely done. Now I don't have that unit to show you, but probably in future, if you know Asus Singapore do have that unit, when they pass it to me, right, I'll show it to you how does it work. Nicely done. Now right at the bottom, you have total of 4 DIMM slot. This has a max capacity of 256 gig and is running on dual channel. Now speaking about the mega transfer, as in like the highest bus speed, it depends on the processor. If you're running 9000 series, it has a max mega transfer of 8600. If you're running 8000 series AMD processor, it's even better. It goes all the way up to 9600 mega transfer. In fact, it's 1000 more than the 9000 processors. Okay, if you are owning a 7000 series AMD processor, the max mega transfer will be 8000. So these are the things that you can play with. Now, besides this, right, this DIMM slot should say that it's specifically supplying good frequency performance on expo profile. So get RAMs that is actually expo profile. But for those of you who actually run on XMP, right, if you have RAMs that is running on XMP, right, and also based on the fact that currently the RAM price is crazy, so if you have existing XMP, do not be disheartened, as Asus have came out with their technology known as AEMP, which is known as the Asus Enhanced Memory Profile. Yeah, that's right. I suddenly lost the word. So with this, right, you can, you know, plug with a XMP profile or RAM too. Now, coming to the PCIe slot, there are a total of 2 PCIe slots. Both of these are full 16 lane channels, and it runs at a full speed of X16. Either of this slot, right, if you populate only one each time, it will run at max speed of X16. And these are both Gen 5 that is controlled by the processor. Now, in the event if you were to populate both at the same time, this is where the lane sharing comes. Be whether you place 2 graphic card or 1 graphic card and 1 capture card, both lanes will only run at X8. Okay, it doesn't run on X16. But of course, both you can run on Gen 5 and it's backward compatible Gen 4. Coming to the M.2, you have total of 5. Okay, you might say that, hey Cleo, where are the 5? I don't see, I only see 4 thermal pads over here. Yep, take a closer look. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Whereas the 5th one, right, it cater a shorter M.2. Now, for the first 2 slots, this and this both are Gen 5 and it's controlled by the processor, and both are backward compatible. Else, for the last 3, which is 3rd, 4th, and 5th, right, these are Gen 4 running off from the chipset, and all this have a max speed of X4. Now, speaking about the speed, the only thing that share lanes, right, is only on the 2nd Gen 5 M.2 slot. In the event if you were to use the rear Type-C USB 4 port, okay, either one of this or you use both at the same time, this 2nd M.2 slot, instead of having the speed X4, it will run X2. Now, on top of which, I'd like to talk more about the structure. Both of the PCIe slot is enforced with a metal frame, giving it more rigidity. Well done. And also additional to it, back to the RAM slot. Now, Asus have came out with their technology, with, I believe some of you have already known about it, known as the Nitropath. Now, what's so surprising about this? The normal way of how RAM is being, you know, plug to the slot, right, the pins, there are gold pins on this slot itself. Okay, total of 168 if I'm not wrong. So the pin is this way. Okay, these are the metal part where you have the contact point over here and the contact point over here. So when you slot your, okay, probably I'll get the RAM. That will be easier. Okay, I'm talking about this over here. Okay, where is my, okay, I'm talking about the gold pin over here, section by section. So imagine that the most of the M.2s, I mean most of the DDR5 DIMM slot, right, they have these metal pieces that is sticking out like that, and the contact point is over here to touch the pins on both sides. So when you slot this in, right, okay, assuming you slot this in, right, it will just grab. So the contact, right, when you grab, right, is this way. See? Here and to the other side. Else for Asus, right, they have designed in a way known as the Nitropath. Instead of having this, right, it's like that. The contact point is on here and here. So when you slot it in, right, it will just bite. And what does this do? Having good connection point on both sides, on the pins itself, right, it will cause less leakage on voltage. And it's proven, as I've tested this during my benchmark. In fact, my benchmark I've done more than 6 times just to ensure that am I looking or am I reading the readings correctly. To my surprise, most of the time when I set the RAM's SoC voltage, right, is 1.15, and all the rest of the motherboard that I've tested, right, it will always hover above 1.15, which is 1.154, 1.158, or even 1.16. But for this motherboard, right, I recheck and recheck, which is 1.15. Guess what? The drawing on the SoC rate is only a 1.13, which is much more lower compared to what I've set. And I was still skeptic about it. That's why I did a lot of tests. It's like, you know, changing RAMs, RAM kits and such. It reacts the same. So this tells me that the technology, the Nitropath, when this is being engaged, right, there are no voltage leakage. Proven. Well done. Too excited to talk about this board till I've forgotten to mention about the measurements. This is a ATX form factor motherboard, and the measurements from here to here is 305 by 244 mm. For the side BRM heatsink and the rear BRM heatsink, the height is as follows. From the base plate to the top, this is 45 mm. And as for the rear, from the base plate again to the top, this is at 50 mm. Now, for the locking mechanism, starting off with the DIMM slot, the latch is on both sides. See? So when you plug it in, right, this will just lock both sides in place. I like this kind of mechanism where you release the RAM slot, right? I mean the RAMs, right? You can just pull with both hands instead of having only one-sided. Most of the RAM slot is only having one-sided locking. So when you remove it, right, you have to remove one side instead of both sides, and that might hurt the pin on the RAMs itself. Nice thought. Now, coming to the M.2 and the PCIe slot. Now, I'll start off with the M.2. Starting on the first slot is just a press and let go. Okay, it's toolless, and this is how it looks like. And to lock a M.2 in, having this size, which is 2280, you just plug it in. Okay, when you plug it in, right, push this clip up, push it down, and to clip it, and this will be in place. To release, this way. Now, it do cater a longer M.2 for this slot, which is having 22110 up to here. So instead of using this, right, you can remove this totally and to make use of this clip. Okay, this clip over here. Alright, so this is the locking mechanism. Right at the bottom, okay, which is here, Again, single release, take out the whole block. And for the locking, right, is with this clip over here. For this two slot, or should I say 1, 2, 3, is with this clip. So when you clip it in, you can just push it down. It will lock in place. And to remove, just press the clip at the end to release. Else for this, right, the fourth slot is making use of this mechanism, just like the top slot. If you are using a longer M.2 at the top slot, which is this kind of lever, so you will need to plug this in. Okay, push it down. To release, do this. Alright, now for the M.2 slot, at the top, you have all the thermal pads, be it the top slot or the bottom section. And for the bottom section, right, only the top 4 slot, which is this, and this. And the 5th slot doesn't have a thermal pad at the bottom. So take note of this. Now, the release mechanism on the PCIe slots, only at the top section, you have this mechanism. See, as I press it, right, this is release, this is in lock position. Release, lock position. So when you clip a graphic card, right, you can just clip it in. You don't have to press this button, right? Just clip it in. And you want to release the graphic card, right? You have to press this. Okay, this will come to a stop. Then you can have both hands holding on to the graphic card and to pull it out. A very good safety precaution, whereby you don't break the card by fiddling too hard. Else the olden way, right, which the bottom slot have, when this is in lock position, right, you don't have a lever to push it down. You will have to use your fingers to press it down in order for you to remove the card. How heavy is this board? Well, I'm just going to take my digital scale to show you, and do pardon me of the spacing. I can't place it over here because you can't see at the top, so I got to put it this way. Let me just turn it on. So as I turn it on, as you can see the digital, right, when I place this board on top of it, this is the weight, 2.5 kg. This is how heavy the board is. Now, coming to the connection point and the onboard audio, let me just turn on the lights. As mentioned to you, this board does support onboard audio, and it's making use of the Realtek ALC 4080, but Asus have done some modification to it, and they have named this as Supreme FX, and it does support beautiful sound, 7.1 surround sound, and to support their in-house device that make use of Atmos. Now, starting with the connection point, at the top there are some pinouts over here. I have no clue what this is. I can only assume this is a TPM module, because when I check this pinout against the online motherboard manual, right, it doesn't state, it doesn't label. In fact, this does not even exist on the motherboard itself. I can only assume. So I might be right, I might be wrong. Okay. Right at the bottom, you will have a audio header for your front IO, headphone and microphone jack. Next, you have two 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, total of 3 4-pin PWM fan headers. Now, for this fan headers at the bottom, right, in fact, all the fan headers that I'm going to mention are all 1 ampere. The only header that has 3 ampere is this one, which has a label water pump. Okay, W_pump. Now, if you are using custom water loop in your system and your pump needs higher amperage, take for example 2.4, 2.5 ampere, do not plug it to any of the headers but to this, which indicate water_pump, because this is having an amperage of 3 ampere. Now, right at the top, you have this switch over here. This is meant for you to control the PCIe slot. At this position, this is on auto, so when you plug in a PCIe Gen 5 graphic card or a capture card or sound card, right, it will just run Gen 5. If you plug Gen 4, it will just run Gen 4. So this is actually auto mode. In the event if you know that the device that you're using, right, is Gen 4 and you don't want the system to detect by itself, that will take some time. You want it boot faster, right? You can set it to Gen 4, which you switch this switch to the center portion. Okay, and there is LED lit up. I believe is in yellow. So this is the indication of this two slot will be running on Gen 4. Okay, by bypassing the boot verification, you just run Gen 4. If you are running devices which is Gen 3, set it to the lowest. Right, the lowest position, it will light up green if I'm not wrong. So it will tell the system that this two PCIe slot will be running on Gen 3. Right, but at all times I would say just set it to auto. Now between the 4-pin PWM fan headers, there are this 4-pin over here. Okay, let me just zoom in so we can have a closer look. See, in between the water pump header and these two fan headers, there is this 4-pin. Now at the bottom 2-pin, this is Mr. Test. I believe there's an additional device for lab tester in ASUS, right, to plug to here and to do the testing and such. Right at the top, this 2-pin is meant to be sensor probe. Meaning say you can buy additional sensor probe to plug to here to sense the temperature on your on your device itself. And the temperature will reflect on hardware info, either 64 and such. Now, next, let me just zoom out. You have total of 3 USB 2.0 socket, and this is very useful. As modern days, right, lots of builders will like to have LCD panel to control LCD on the fans and such. Instead of worrying, do I have enough USB port to cater for such devices, ASUS have done up 3 pieces. So you don't have to worry that you need to get, 3 is actually more than enough. You don't have to worry to get an external or internal so-called USB device, which is optional. Next, you have this 3.2 socket, which is meant for your front IO Type A port, and this has a transfer rate of 5 gig, and it does support 2 USB Type A. Next, you have the front IO connection, where you connect your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED, and your hard disk LED. And over here, you have the LN2 mode. This is meant for liquid nitrogen overclocking. Alright, at all times I will not touch this, just leave it as it is. Moving to the front, 4 right angle SATA port. And you have another 3.2 front Type A port, USB Type A port. And this is again 5 gig transfer rate. So this together with this, okay, you can support up to 4 front USB Type A port. If your case have 2, 3.2 cable, right, you can just connect, and as mentioned, you support up to 4 USB Type A port, and all these are running a transfer rate of 5 gig. Next, you have this two. Now, both of these are Type C port, okay, and both of these have a transfer rate of 20 gig. The only difference of why having this here, right, the second one, this is also a charging port, and it carries a 60 power delivery function. If you have laptop using Type C connectors, right, you can just connect to here, and you can just plug your laptop or even your MacBook and such. And besides this, right, it does has fast charging. Meaning say if you connect any USB-C charging cable, right, to your mobile device, right, you will do fast charge, which later on I will show you. There's an application to indicate what are the fast charging voltage and such. Now, in order to use the power delivery or the fast charge function, right, you will need to plug a 8-pin PCIe connector. Don't mix up with the 8-pin EPS for the ATX, right? This is meant where you plug to your graphic card, which is the PCIe 8-pin, right? So when you supply the power to here, right, this will have enough current to charge your mobile device or to charge your laptop or MacBook. Next, you have a 24-pin connector. This is meant for you to supply power from your PSU and to plug it to here to give you the power on your components itself. Another 4-pin PWM fan header, a tri switch. And what does this retry switch means? In the event you have done all your UEFI settings and such, and when you boot, you can't boot. So most of the time, if you don't have this switch, right, we will just click on the clear CMOS, right, so that you allow the system to run or to boot into UEFI. But the thing is that all your configuration will be gone if you don't save it. So in such event, right, you can press on the retry key. Meaning say, still having your configuration, but I'm just going to retry. So this is actually what it meant. Next, you have this Flexkey. Now, this Flexkey is programmable. You can set it to a reset switch, the boot save switch, or even to set it as direct key, or to set it to turn on and off the ARGB effect on the rear I/O. Right, I will talk more about this Flexkey later. Next, you have this start key. In the event, if you want to power up your system, right, you can just click on start. In fact, these three keys, right, I find that it's very useful when you are not mounting your system inside a case. You can test it outside the case. So these are deemed very useful. Next, you have a 3-pin 5V ARGB connector again. Now, at the top, you have this digital debug LED. And right at the bottom, right, there are also debug LEDs, which is lighting up during the power cycle and such. This is very useful. And as for this, right, I will show you in live demo. Before, when you post into Windows, right, this will do the postcode, the verification, and you will see figures running about. But right after, when you load into Windows, right, this will be a monitor, or should I say a thermometer, to show you the temperature of your processor. A very nice touch. Now, right at the top, total of four 4-pin PWM fan headers, whereby this is CPU up, this is CPU fan. Now, for radiator fans and for liquid AIO radiator fans or for air cooler fans, right, make sure you plug primary to the CPU underscore fan. Okay, because this have the individual control on your fan curve. Do not plug it to CPU underscore op. Okay, if you plug it to CPU underscore op, right, it will just not able to control. Instead, it will follow the CPU underscore fan. And what does this CPU underscore op for? In the event if you want to do push-pull configuration on your liquid AIO, then you say one set of fans on each side of the radiator, right? Probably three. It's like three fans. So you want all the fans to run on the correct RPM. So this is where it comes to play. One set of fans, which is 3, plug to the CPU underscore fan. The other set, plug it to the CPU op. Because CPU op will take instruction of whatever you have set the fan curve on CPU underscore fan. Right? So this is actually why you have the CPU op. Followed by this is for your liquid AIO pump. Okay, make sure you connect to here. Then this is your chassis fan. Now, at the top, reinforcement again, there are two 8-pin EPS connector. These are metal frame. And again, the technology, right, is just like what I've explained on the nitro connection point on the DIMM slot. That's the reason why they have enforced this, right, to have metal pieces, so that when you plug your 8-pin EPS, right, it will be firmly secured and prevention on the leakage on the current itself. So when you do your overclocking, right, it will, take up, or should I say, it will optimize your current to the fullest when you're doing the overclocking. This is the rear I/O, where on the top left, this is a clear CMOS button, followed by a BIOS flashback button that works hand in hand with this USB type A port that has a rectangular line on it, and it says BIOS. And of course, you will need to have a firmware on a thumb drive plugged to this, and to make use of the BIOS flashback. What it does is that you don't have to plug in your processor or your RAMs. You can make use of this function to update the BIOS version on your motherboard. Now, for more information, head down to the online menu and check out how to make use of this. Or you can click on my top right hand corner, where it links you to a content creator known as Ronin Wow. He did illustrate on how to make use of this BIOS flashback button together with this port. Now, right over here, it has a HDMI port, where this is version 2.1. It has a projection of 4K 60Hz, and it's making use of the integrated graphic of your processor. There are a total of 5 Type-C USB port. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this 3 having a transfer rate of 10 gig, and these are data port only. Or you can use this as charging port, up to you. Now, else for the bottom section, right, these are dedicated USB 4.0 port, where it has a transfer rate of 40 gig. And besides data transferring, it does work as a display port. As in, like, having a Type-C with the function of ALT DP, you can make use of this to do projection on Type-C monitor, right? And it has a projection of 4K 60Hz. Again, it's making use of the integrated graphic to do the projection. Now, there are a total of 6 USB Type A port, as you can see, all in red, and all will have a transfer rate of 10 gig. So you don't have 5 gig or version 2.0. It's all 10 gig. Nicely done. There are 2 RJ45 socket, which one cater for 5 gig transfer rate, the other a 10 gig transfer rate. Coming to this section, this is the Wi-Fi socket, which support full-on Wi-Fi 7, and it has a very strong channel, making use of the MediaTek 7927 that has a 320 MHz channel bandwidth, which is a true Wi-Fi 7. Besides supporting Wi-Fi 7, it does support Bluetooth, which is version 5.4. And coming to this section, this is the audio section, where you plug your microphone line out, which is for your speaker, and the SPDIF out. Now, as for the antenna socket, the way that it's being plugged, right, it has its proprietary connector, as you can see here. So what you need to do, right, you just plug it in. You don't have to screw in, just plug. And if you want to remove, right, with a bit of force, you will need to pull it out. See? This section, I will show you the function of the Flexkey on my lower right, where you have the start and the Flexkey. Now, this Flexkey, you can program it to either direct key, and what does it do is either to turn it off when you're in Windows mode, or when you turn it on, right, instead of going to Windows, right, you will go directly to UEFI, which I will show you. Or you can set it to turn off the Aura Sync. Now, before I proceed on, right, showing you the Flexkey, take a look at the top where you have the debug LED. Probably right now it's too bright, you can't see it. Now, the debug LED, as you can see on my top left hand corner, the Windows is on. And this, right, instead of being a postcode on the debug LEDs, right, it becomes a thermometer of your processor. So this is actually the function of it. Now, to illustrate the Flexkey itself, as I mentioned to you, right, if you program it to direct key, which I'll show you later, this will become a off function. See, it will just shut down, which you can see on my top right hand corner. And when it's totally shut down, right, okay, right now it's totally shut. See, it's off. Now, in the event if you want to go straight to UEFI when this is outside the motherboard, instead of pressing the start key, right, since this is programmed to direct key, when I press this, right, okay, it turns on. Take a look at what happened to the screen itself. It will just boot straight into UEFI without you pressing the delete key. This is a very good function. Right? So as it load, right, see, it loads to this page. By right, this should go straight to Windows, but instead it will boot into your UEFI, so that you don't have the hassle to press the delete key. See, it's done. Now, to program the Flexkey, you will need to go to advanced mode. Okay, let me just go to the advanced mode. Under tools, you have this Flexkey. See, right now I'm actually programmed to direct key. So, as mentioned to you, this is a shutdown machine key and a boot up directly to UEFI. Now I'm just going to program this to Aura on off. Okay, I'm just going to save it. So when you boot, right now, instead of setting it to direct key, I've set it to Aura on and off. So as and when, right, okay, let me just move this. towards the ARGB. Take a look at the ARGB. So you have to press the flex key over here. Okay, not so sure if you can see. Alright, probably I'll just do it this way. Yep, you can see the ARGB at the rear. So when I press the flex key, right, see, it will turn off the aura sync. I mean the ARGB effect. So as and when, right, even the system is running, right, you can just press the flex key. It will turn on and off. So this is actually how simple it is. Now is to test the signal strength or the bandwidth of all these ports that you see over here. One is the Wi-Fi adapter, the other two are the wired LAN, which is of the RJ45 connection. And some of you have messaged me in Reddit and even sent me email asking me, hey Q, in fact you can cut short on the network test based on the fact that you're testing the equipment to see if it is able to cater for the upload and download speed. So as I think about it, it makes sense. Alright, so I'm just going to skip the overseas and I will just do it local. So I'll start off with the 10 gig. As you can see, these are all disabled. So I'm just going to enable this. And once I've done that, right, this will reflect. Okay. And I will take local and to test. So by right, I should be getting around 7 to 8 gig. See, I'm getting that for the download speed. And for the upload, it's around there too, around 7 gig to 8 gig. See, it does matches what this port can do. Alright, I'm just going to disable this and to enable another, which is the 5 gig port. So by right, if it's able to do the upload and download, right, it should be around 4.3 to 4.5. Okay, let's start off with this. Okay, still same server, which is local. So I don't really have to worry about overseas or not. It's just to see if it is able to cater. See, this is a 5 gig port and it's reaching 4.3, 4.2, 4.3. This is at acceptable range. And as for the upload, see, 4.7 is almost near 5 gig. So this does check out that both RJ45 port, the wired LAN port, is doing fine. Now I'm just going to disable this and to enable the Wi-Fi connection. Now for the Wi-Fi connection, this is a true Wi-Fi 7, which has a bandwidth channel of 320 MHz. If everything goes well, this should be able to upload and download about 3K plus, or should I say 3 point something gig of bandwidth. So here we go. Now for Wi-Fi, it will take a bit longer as there is a delay. See, it does match 3.5, 3.6 gig on a true Wi-Fi 7 adapter. As I've tested for some of the boards which is cater for Wi-Fi 7, right, those are 160 MHz channel. The most I can get is until 1.8 gig. But for this, see, it went over. Okay, I'm just going to test it again, just to show you, just to give you the assurance that, see, it does support up to 3.2 gig. And for upload, probably I would say around the same, hovering around 2.9 to 3 gig. Okay, here we go. See, 3.1, 3.2. So with this, say, right, all this tested, the LAN port and the Wi-Fi port is working superb. When you have done up a fresh copy of Windows 11 on the system itself, when you boot up and to hit to the device manager, you will see that some of the drivers is not installed properly and some is even unknown. At this point of time, you will have to hit down to the official website based on this motherboard model and to download the drivers one at a time and to install it to clear all the exclamation mark and the unknown devices. So I would advise that for the very first time when you boot up, right, you will get a prompt on the lower right hand corner, okay, right above the taskbar, and this is what you'll be getting. This, it is to ask you to install the Asus DriverHub. It's actually a very neat program, because in the past, majority of us will depend on the Armory crate, but instead of doing that, right, you do not want to install Armory Crate, you can make use of this, as it's a built-in function on the latest, or should I say modern motherboards, where you have the Asus DriverHub, and this is triggered as enable. So when you get this prompt, right, just install it. Go through the proceedings, as in like to accept, agree. Once it's done, right, an icon will be populated on the home, on the home screen. Let me just show you. See? So what you need to do is just to launch this. And when you launch this, right, as mentioned to you, those device manager, the drivers which are missing, right, it will scan and to show you over here. Okay, and you can just install all in one page instead of heading down, having a trouble to head down to the website and such. So it's just a one click, one pager kind of stuff. As you can see, right, I have cleared all the drivers, okay, on my device manager, and you can witness over here. So these are all done. Things like the Realtek USB, the 10 gig LAN connection and such is all done. Now besides this, right, it did install the additional driver, or should I say together with the application. If you look on my lower right, it says the USB voltage watcher. Now what is this linked to? Earlier on during the intro on the connection on the motherboard, where I mentioned that there's this 8-pin PCIe socket where you plug from your power supply to that socket, right, it will supply more power, so it activate the fast charging capability on the front Type-C port. In fact, the 8-pin is just right beside the Type-C port. So if you want to charge your mobile phone, your tablet, your Android device, your iOS device, your tablets and your iPad, you can make use of that front Type-C port. So just to show you right now, when I double click on this icon over here, right, it says fast charging, but the port is off based on the fact that I have not connected anything. So just to show you right now, my iOS device, or should I say my iPhone. Okay, now my iPhone right now is actually not charged, it's at 96%. So when I plug the cable, right, take a look. Okay, right now it's actually off. When I plug, see, it went off to on, charging. And it depending on the wattage of your, one thing good about this is that it depends on the percentage of your mobile device is being charged at. The lower percentage it is, right, the higher wattage it will be. Okay, so far I see the max, right, is about 8 watt. So it's going to charge pretty fast within, I would say within half an hour, right, from 20%, it will just charge up all the way to about 80 to 85% of my iPhone. So this is how fast it is. So this is one of the functions that I do appreciate. I can see what's actually going on. Now besides this, right, on the hub itself, okay, let me just close all this. Now on the driver hub itself, you have additional application that you can install. Things like idle 64, the CPU-Z, inclusive of the Dolby SS ROG. Now this is whereby if you purchase any Asus Atmos device, which is for sound, you can make use of this application to control the sound, the sound effects and such, or should I say the sound characteristic. Yeah, and there are other things that you can install. Now, exclusive to Asus customer, you have this individual kit, whereby most of this integrated application done by Asus, right, nicely done. Let me just show you what they are. I've installed a couple. In fact, I've installed all except for the RAID Expert utility, and I will not be showing you the WinR right now. In fact, this is the compression and the decompression of files, as in like, to zip up the file. You can make use of this application. Now starting off with the hardware info. this is how it looks like. You have the theme, and I do like how they split the section with the lines. It's very clear cut. Nice thought. Besides this, there are 3 other applications which I will show you. Okay, let me just close this and to show you. First of all, the Asus AI Advisor. Okay, let me just put this one side. What this is none other than just a artificial intelligence chat, or should I say something like a chat GPT. So what it does is that it is tailored just for your motherboard, or should I say this motherboard. So whatever you find in UEFI that you do not understand, you can type here and it will define what they are. Take for example, there is this section, what is, let's see, PBO limit. Okay, take for example, I know that there's a function on this. The AI Advisor, right, will just pull out what you need to know, the information of what that does. And besides this, right, let's say you know certain tricks, you want to set it. Take for example, you read on the internet and you want to set CPPC for the dual stack processor. How to set? You can just type how to set CPPT in UEFI. Okay, based on this, the AI itself, right, will pull the instruction, the steps to tell you how to do it. See, it will give you the step based on this motherboard. So this is actually a very neat feature whereby if you are new, you want to learn certain things, right, besides on checking on the internet itself, you want the definition. Let's say what is what is CPPC, terms that is written on the UEFI description, right? You can just use this. It will just tell you the not only the description of it, the knowledge about it, it also, as I showed you earlier, the steps on how to get into this function. Okay, so this is actually one good point about this. And some of you might say that, hey, I can make use of other chat GPT and such and to derive. Yes, you can, no problem. But when it comes to configuring, right, you will need to tell that GPT as like, I'm using this model, how do I actually go about setting up? Else for this, right, you just tell you straight. You don't even need to type any model and such. As I mentioned, this is tailored for this motherboard. So this is one function. Next will be Turbo V Core. Now for Turbo V Core, when you launch it, right, this is the interface whereby for overclockers and for undervolters, you can set the V Core, you can set the SOC, etc, etc. Alright, all the voltages. So as you set along the way, right, take for example, you want to set to this, you just click on apply, it will just run instantly, so that you don't have to reboot to UEFI to do the configuration. So it's actually on the go. And please be mindful when you are doing all this voltage over here, because I will not be responsible if you do it aggressively on the voltage and you will damage your system. Okay, so take note on this. I'm not going to click on apply, just to show you this interface. And of course, you can set the ratio of all your cores. Right now it's running at 4.3 gig. If you want to run at 5 gig, you can just pump this slider up. See, 50, it means 5 gig. Alright, so you just click on apply. As mentioned, I'm not going to click on apply. So this is another utility which you can use. Now coming to the last utility, I like this utility. I like this a lot. Though as you can see earlier, right, I'm making use of this to show my iPhone. It's just a mirror image, simple as that. But somehow this function over here, right, is not only mirroring my phone. It can toggle your mobile phone, your iPad, your tablet as a secondary device. And I'll show you how. Now, when you launch this Asus GlideX, you have this interface. First thing to do, you have to install the application on the mobile device, be it your tablet or your smartphone. And to do that, right, you don't have to go to your smartphone or tablet to go either Google Play Store or Apple Store to install that. You can just click under this interface, just click here where it says download. Once you click on that, right, it will show you a QR code. You can just scan with your mobile device. So be it whether Android or iOS, right, automatically it will select as it shows over here. Once this is done, right, it will show on your mobile device. See, my iPhone, I do have that. Now, things of what this thing can do, let me just show you. As mentioned to you, this is exclusively for consumer who purchase this motherboard. See, exclusively, you can go max up to 2 devices, and these are the things that are applicable. The functions, full function. In general, if you're not a consumer of this motherboard, right, in the public, yes, you can use, but it's only limited. See, general, all are crossed out. Now, having said this, right, now go to the main point. In order for me to have the device on this device map, I will need to launch this application over here. Okay, click on this and to scan. Once it's done, right, you see this will populate out. In fact, I have already done the scan. It's just that showing you by motion. So once you scan, right, you will have this. And with this, right, it's either on your phone to do the touch, either to extend or such. Now, take for example, as mentioned to you, this is my own third-party program. If you don't have this, right, you can make use of this application. Just click on this icon over here and click on mirror. So when you click on mirror, right, you will just detect. See? So on your mobile device, when you click on accept, then you click on start broadcast. Okay. This application will grab. See? It's already done. Okay, don't get confused. On the extreme right, this is my own third-party application. Else, this is related to Asus GlideX. It's the mirroring of your device, so we can toggle. Besides this, right? Okay, let me just disconnect this. I wouldn't want that anymore. Now, besides this, right? Okay, hang on a minute. Okay, let me launch this back. Besides this, right, you can do all the functions over here. As I show you, you can do mirror, you can do extend. Oh, by the way, when you click on this, right, it does show you over here. Probably I show you over here is much easier. Extend meaning to say to set your mobile device or your tablet as a extended monitor or second monitor, which is very useful. Unify control, you just want to play punk, using your mobile device to control your desktop, you can do that. File transferring between the photos and such between the mobile device or the iPad that you have or your tablet to the desktop or vice versa. Next, you have communication. In fact, Windows have a built-in phone link whereby you can make phone calls through the desktop that controls your mobile. So this is actually the same function. If you put communication, right, you'll be able to dial a call using your desktop. If you have a mic and a headset and such, just use that function to dial, and you will automatically send the signal to your mobile device and to call the caller and such. And for phone album, then you say to share whatever you have on your device on the screen over here. And as for share cam, probably when you trigger the camera on your device, right, you can project it on your desktop. Now, as mentioned to you, I'm just going to go some tasks over here. I've shown you what is mirror. Let me just show you extend. This will be more interesting. So when you put to extend, right, you will set your mobile device as a secondary monitor. So when I click on accept, take a look what happened. See? So sorry about the orientation. It's probably very small. So you have this. Right now, I'm actually set to duplication. Okay, I would to pull. I hate this. Okay, this, assuming this is actually a secondary device, see, to identify, see, when I click on this, you have 1 over here, I mean 1 and 2 over here, you have 1 over 2 over here. Okay, I'm so sorry because due to the limited space. Now when I click on this, see, 1-2 1-2 on my mobile device. If I'm going to set to extended, right, oh gosh, I lost connection. Did I hope not. Okay, let me just redo the whole thing again. It's in use. Interesting. Okay, let me try again. I will set extend, accept. Oh, based on the fact this is actually running wireless, so do take note on it. So right now it's actually on extend. Okay, if I were to identify, see, this is 1 and this is 2. Okay, I'm going to do it again. See, 1 and my mobile device is 2. So this is actually pretty neat, I would say. You can make use of this. I mean, you can make use of this application, right, to do all the tasks that you wanted. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't close this. It's going to highlight. See, you can do mirror, you can do secondary monitor or such. So these are all the functions that is built in. A very neat application. This is the interface of the Armory crate. Once you have installed, first thing when you launch, right, it will show you this dashboard where you have all the CPU and the GPU frequency and the temperature on the components like your GPU, CPU, your RAMs, your motherboard, and etc. The percentage usage, as in like the load of it, or how much is being used on your hard disk and such. And over at this section, these are the fans RPM. If you have populated all the fans on the headers itself, it will reflect over here. And the last section here, these are all the voltages that is pulling from the system, be it your CPU, your RAMs, and such. Now, of course, on the go, once you have plugged all the allocated fans to the respective headers, right, you can make use of this one click function. For example, let's say you want it to be, at standard, you can click on standard. If you want it on silent, you can click on silent. Take for example, right now I'm on turbo mode. So if I'm to set to full speed, right, now I only have one populated on the fan headers, which is the CPU fan, as this is my radiator fans. So right now it's under turbo mode. If I'm going to set to full speed, see what happened to the RPM. See, it will just go up. So these are the things that you can actually do, and I'm going to switch it back to turbo. And the last section here is customize. To custom the fan curve that you derive on all fan headers or individual fan headers. In fact, when you click on this, right, it will take you to the fan expert 4, which you can find this on the subcategory. See, fan expert. So all these are the fan headers. If you have populated those headers, right, you can manually set the fan curve and such, or you can even set to fix. Right now, as you can see, is running around 1500, right? You have to click on fix. Okay, you can adjust accordingly to what you want. Let's say I just want to run at 1500. So with this, right, if I were to click back here, take a look at the fan RPM. See, it went down. So these are things that you can actually do with the fan expert. I'm just going to switch it back to the smart mode. And of course, on this section here, right, the fan expert, you can let the system determine, as in like allowing the AI to determine the cooling, how much cooling is needed on your system itself. And of course, when you do this, right, you have to do the auto tuning. And again, these are all the profile. If you don't want to use AI, which is off, you can use silent, you can use standard, you can use turbo, or you can use full speed. And on all this mode, if you want to set it a much quieter pace, right, you can set to this extremely quiet. Then you can adjust the spin up time and the spin down time, so that the fan will not do a sudden, turning that causes the noise. Now, besides this, right, on my left devices where you click on here, this is also a one-click switch, whereby you can do the ARGB effect when it shuts down. Then you'll say that, okay, let me just bring my ARGB. Yep. So with this, right, you'll be able to set a effect. Let's say it power down, right, and you want to have some other effects. You can do that. Okay, you can just select, up to you. So when this is powering down, right, instead of showing you red, it will show yellow, signaling to you that it's powering down. Next will be the addressable header. Again, one click, one stop. If you have populated the ARGB strips on the ARGB header on the motherboard itself, right, you can select this. There are a total of 3: header 1, header 2, and header 3. Next will be this info. This is just the information on what you have on the system itself, as in, you know, how long did it write, and the power cycle and such. Now for polymer lightings, a one-click situation, whereby I do take note that on this motherboard itself, right, for the actual device to run is in fact the rear IO. Okay, on my top right hand corner, as you can see right now, I'm actually syncing with the Aura Sync. If you want it individually, right, you can just click on the Chrono Plus 3D. And with this, right, in future there will be more profile over here for you to toggle. Right now it's only by default. Right, so take note on this. I'm going to set this back. Now for the last section over here, which says Wi-Fi Q antenna, this is whereby you place your Wi-Fi antenna to the nearest area and you want to detect how strong the signal is. So take for example this, right, I'll just click on start, and you can just set the direction and you scan. It will show you the status of how strong it is. Okay, I hope that, alright, I'm not connected to the 5 gig and 6 gig, that's why I can't execute. Anyway, so this is actually what you can do. Okay, oops, see, so this is actually a detection on the position on your Wi-Fi. Now next will be the Aura Sync. As usual, you can control this individually, which is either the rear IO or the memory or even the ARGB strip. Now I'm not going to go individually, but just to show you. So for example, let's say you want to change this static color to some other colors, you can. So let's say you want to place green, see, it will reflect green. You want to place something else, it will be something else, see. So these are things that you can do. Then it's like, for example, rainbow, you will set to rainbow. It's pretty instant. Now among all this, right, I find that this is very useful, which is smart. Right now it's actually on idle, so as you can see the temperature over here, right, you can set yourself, okay, pulling the temperature. So reaching towards that temperature, right, the color will change. See, just now it changed to amber based on the fact that there are some runs. Okay, probably I would to run the Cinebench and to show you. Alright, so take for example, right now it's actually on idle, so when you run Cinebench, right, it will start to load. See, it will be amber, and if you reach above certain max, will be in red, okay, telling you that okay, this is to the max. So this is actually how it works. Pretty nifty, I would say. Okay, right now I'm just gonna stop. See, it bring down the temperature. Now earlier on, when it goes red, right, because that is above 60 degrees Celsius, you can change this. Alright, so all these are pretty flexible. Now I'm just going to set it back to static, and to have, no, probably I'll set it to rainbow. Okay, so these are the things that you can do on the ARGB side, ARGB effect. Now for micro, this is whereby you have devices where you need to remap your keys and such. So this is actually pretty useful. You can map it, especially for ROG keyboards. For first game, this is meant for the connection when you do the gameplay. You don't want any lags and such. Now right now at the moment I don't have this at all. Okay, as you can read over here, the GT booster theme and such. Okay, I'm not actually installed this application, but anyway, I'll just go through, agree to policy and accept. So these are the things that it will do for you, as in like to smoothen your gameplay and such on the connection, especially for first person shooter games. you probably will need this because you don't want the lag, and you just want to have a enjoyable smooth play on the internet versus other players. Next will be scenario profile. Now this is meant for you to load the application, for example games and such. Okay, I don't have games over here, but you can have a look. See, you can select the games and such. Assuming these are games, right, you can select the games and you can configure the performance, you can configure the alternative ARGB effects and such. So this is actually how it works. See, you can actually, let's say you select a game over here, right, you can select the ARGB effect, and of course you need to apply and to save. And I believe there will be more sub menu over here to do the configuration on the performance profile and such. Now for game library, this will list down all your games that is actually installed in the in this system itself. And I believe that you can do the fine tune over here, as in like the profile, and also to load the game application. Now game expert, I've talked about it. Now as for tool, right, earlier on I mentioned about the Asus DriverHub. In fact, when you click on this, right, you will take you to the Asus DriverHub. See, so this is actually what it meant by tools. Then of course you have the platform content with all the happening going on, etc. All right, featuring which are the things you can download for free and such. Yeah, or you have promotion. Okay, at the moment not much, I would say. Then if you collect points and such, right, the Asus points and such, right, you can redeem stuff or you can purchase things from here. Featuring library. Now these are the things that you can install, having a better experience on ARGB effect. Then on the assistant itself, right, let's say you have games, application, you want to manage the data, etc., you can use this. And then for content services, in fact the content performance. Now for user center, this is whereby you log in your profile, and if you have a lot of Asus products, right, you can register over here, and you will guide you through, as in like, let's say you have some problems with your Asus products, you can come to here and to seek help, or should I say to contact the service center. Now as for the last settings, this is whereby you can set the theme. Take for example, right now I'm actually using the dark theme. I can set to Pro Art. See, this will be in Pro Art, or you can have Asus Prime will be in green, or you can have black and white, or the white theme. Okay, this is very glaring. And of course you have the update center, whereby it will show you if there's anything updated for all these functions over here, right? And last but not least, about telling you which version and such. Now to show you the RAM training cycle of this AM5 platform, and this is in fact one of the characteristics of what AM5 will do. If you're migrating from Intel to AM5 and from upgrading from AM3 or AM4 to AM5, right, you will be expecting this. For the very first time, when you piece up your processor, your RAMs and everything, when you boot it up, right, it will not go straight into UEFI. In fact, it will take some time to verify your RAMs, pulling the JTAG profile, then you will boot into UEFI, and this will take some time. During that period of time, kindly do not shut down the machine and to do the clear CMOS, because especially for Intel user, if you were to keep on doing that, right, reason being, for Intel user, when you piece up everything when you boot, right, it will go straight into UEFI, right? But for this, right, no, it will take some time to verify. So assuming that you think that it's not going to boot up, so that's why you keep on shutting it down, clear CMOS and such. Don't do that, you will damage the system. Now on my lower left, where I mentioned earlier the Flexkey, I program it, able to program to direct key or to shut down the ARGB effect on the rear IO. Right now I've set it to reset key. Okay, then the moment when I click on start, right, that is the very first time that it will take longer to verify before you boot into UEFI. And to show you the screen itself that's connected over here, right, is right at the top, where you can see the blank screen, the black screen. On the black screen itself, on the lower right hand corner, there is this stopwatch. The moment I press the start key, I will press the stopwatch, So as mentioned, for the very first time when you boot up, okay, this is how long it takes to boot into UEFI, and it will verify. During this process, right, you'll see that the digital debug LED will cycle, inclusive of the LED lights. As you can see, it will shuffle. So let it run. As mentioned, do not shut down your machine and to clear CMOS and such. In no time, it will boot into UEFI. And also to take note, the higher capacity you have on the RAMs and higher mega transfer speed, right, it will take much longer. This is a 32 gig kit. See, on my screen, it's booting up. So right now, I'm just going to press this. It takes approximately, alright, about 34 seconds to 35 seconds. Right now, it's being verified. Now, I'm just going to press the reset key. And I'm just going to, okay, take a note, for the very first time, it's 35 seconds. I'm going to reset this. And right now, I'm just going to reset the whole system again and to run. Now, on the screen, it does show not to worry because there is a delay on my IP KVM. Right now, it's actually restarting. So as I talk, right, let it run. And in no time, right, you will boot up. And it take approximately, okay, see, approximately 24 seconds. So as mentioned to you, right, for the very first time let it run, it will take slightly longer. Which this board not too bad, which is 36. I've encountered more AM5 platform, right, they run more than 1 minute or so. That is even a bigger hassle. But for this, right, a 32 gig kit, I can run for the very first time at 36 seconds. Else after verification when I boot up is 24 seconds. Now to conduct the thermal test, but before I do so, right, take a look at the ARGB. There are only 2 cycles of halogram on the rear I/O. So this is one, a very nice pattern. This you can control the ARGB effect as I showed you earlier in Armory crate, but you can't set like show temperature and such. There's only 2 patterns. Probably in future they might have a better board that shows the temperature and such on the panel itself, because I find that this space, right, is good for that. See, this is actually the second pattern. Now before I conduct a test, just to show you the room temperature here is at 30.7 degrees Celsius. In fact, it's hovering around 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, and I'm not turned on the aircon, and I'm testing this in a hot and humid country. These are the components which I'll be using. You can pause and have a look. As for processor, I'll be using a Ryzen 9 9950X from AMD, this motherboard, and for the RAMs is a pair of 32 gig kit from King Bang, known as the dark heatsink, and this is the cache latency, the mega transfer, and the voltage. And of course, I've activated X-Pro Profile 1. And as for the M.2, I'll be using a ByWin X570 2TB Generation 5. And for my liquid cooler, I'm using a very old liquid cooler, but it still be able to tell me how much this system can run, as in like how well the motherboard can cool certain things. Anyway, as mentioned, an old cooler from Arctic known as the Liquid Freezer 2 360. The only thing that I swap out is from the original fan, I swap out to 3x120mm Gentle Typhoon. And of course, I did some tweak. On the VSOC, I've set it to 1.15 volt. But during the test, right, I find something amazing about this, whereby it will not stay at 1.15. Instead, it will be something else, which I'm going to explain to you later. This is something very fantastic. And as mentioned to you, showing you that my room temperature is 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, okay, without aircon. Just wanted to show you how well you perform in a hot and humid country. And as for the PVO2 limits and such, right, these are the settings that I've done. So it's actually by default of this processor. So you can see the PPT, TDC, and EDC. Later on, when you look at the Ryzen Master, right, it will show there too, which I'll explain to you later. For curve optimizer, since this is 2 stack, the first stack I'll make use of magnitude -15, and the second stack will be -10. As for curve shaper, I only make use of 3 frequency, which is medium, high, and max. And all this frequency have 3 temperature settings, but I've set it to equal. So for mid frequency, all temperature will be -15, For high frequency, all temperature will be -10, and for max frequency, all will be -0.5. So as you can see over here, right, if I were to take off this, yep, during the idle time, right, it's very well. It's always hovering around 47 degrees Celsius. And to conduct the test, right, in fact, I've done a few runs. First of all, I'm making use of the Cinebench R23 and the firmware running together to stress on the processor. So the heat, right, will go to the motherboard. So with this, right, I run a 30 minutes test, the stress test using firmware and Cinebench. Then I let it cool down for 5 minutes. That is the idle period. Just let the system cool down. And before I conduct the last test, which is the 10 minutes stress test, as I mentioned to you, the idle temperature is hovering very well. It's either 46.8 to 47.6, something like that. Alright. And things that you need to take note is actually the core clock. This is on the average of all the 16 cores. Then the rest, probably you can actually have a look. And as I mentioned to you, right, I set the CPU SoC to 1.15. So throughout the whole run, right, you will see something good. Besides this, take a look at the temperature on the motherboard, the VRM, the chipset, the RAMs. Okay, and as for the M.2, right, as mentioned to you, I make use of the Gen 5, which will show you the temperature. Okay, the first one, temperature 3, in fact, this is the controller. The temperature 2, this is the NAND. Okay, with this said, sitting on the Ryzen Master, right, as mentioned to you, the PPT, TDC, and EDC, you can see over here. Okay, let me just show you. Say I've set to this, which is equivalent to this. So as I start running, right, okay, let me just pull and run. See, this is a live recording. Then as I run, few minutes, nothing much. So as I drag to the last 3 minutes, okay, somewhere around here. Okay, so as I run, right, take a look at the temperature. It's hovering around 76, 77 degrees Celsius, which is fantastic. And the average on the clock speed, right, is 4.9. In fact, the peak is around 5 gig plus. And it's quite consistent when you look at the graph over here. Okay, this is actually the average core. This graph is taken from the average core clock. Okay, you can see not much of dips. Even there are dips, right, they are far apart. And when I look further in, right, the power package is hovering very well, and the CPU core power, amazingly, it stays at 170 or 169. And these are the PPT TDC that is being drawn. Now take a look at the SoC. Asus have definitely done something to their ARGB, which most of the time when I test on this, right, when I set the SoC voltage to 1.15, right, it will pull up to 1.16 or 1.154 to 1.16. But for this board, right, I thought that, you know, I have some miscalculation and such, so I keep on resetting the CMOS and do the run again. In fact, I've done 5 times, yep, to ensure that I'm not seeing it incorrectly. The readings, in fact, it is 1.137 or so when I set to 1.15. Okay, that's the most interesting part. In fact, the lower SoC voltage that it runs, right, your system will run cooler. And why do I say this? Take a look at the motherboard, 41 degrees Celsius. Now, mind you, I'm in a room temperature of 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. By right, I should be heating this around 45 to, 48 degrees Celsius, or maybe 50 degrees Celsius, and some even 60. But when I look at the overall surrounding on the motherboard, right, the motherboard, the BRM, see, it doesn't hit 55, it's hovering around 52. Then for the chipset, okay, take a look. One is higher based on the fact that it's running on the high speed internet connection and such. So that's why it's actually hovering on 61, which is okay. It didn't go above 65 and not even reaching 70. Some boards, they do run hot. Okay, so overall the chipset is running fine. It's around the temperature. And for the RAMs, right, take a look, 45 degrees Celsius, or should I say the max is 46 degrees Celsius. And for the M.2, the chunky piece of metal, I can't believe my eyes. My controller is actually 39, 39 to 45. It always hover around there. It doesn't go beyond that. And for the NAND, right, it's 47 degrees Celsius. And looking at the fact, when I look at the max boost of this processor, right, it does hover 5.7 randomly. And for consistency, right, it does hover around 5 gig. In fact, take a look at the peak. Not an issue. And it's very consistent. So as I run further, oh, by the way, when I touch the VRM heatsink, right, it's not hot at all. So that is amazing. So when I run to the end, where you see, okay, this is the score, 42K 263. Now, on average, if I were to do by default without setting the PBO limits and such, right, I am actually talking about this. All right. Oops. Okay, just give me a minute, all right? Okay, over here. As I mentioned to you, if I don't run all this curve optimizer and the curve shaper and such, right, the scores that I'm having, right, this will only be at 39K. Okay, once after I've done all this, right, it went 2K above, which is 42K. So this shows me that this board not only very mature in a way that, all the temperature check outs very well. It's very stable. Best part is the SoC voltage. Fantastic. Okay, let me just go back. See? Alright, pull to the max. Yep. It's around 1.137. And best part is that the rest of the temperature, right, is doing fine. So, as mentioned to you, this board is very matured. It is indeed a very good cooling board to run a high-end processor. The Asus Crosshair X870E Dark Hero comes in a hefty price tag. The MSRP is around 950 to 1K USD. In Singapore, it's around 1100 or 1200. But I do know that some places like Amazon.sg, right, they do sell 1K and such, which is much cheaper. But the thing is that if you purchase that all from Amazon, right, when you come to RMA to fix the board, right, you have to send the board to Asus directly, and that will take some time, and it does have some hassle. So if you guys are here in Singapore, right, I would advise you to purchase this board, especially this premium board, locally. It's just you pay the additional, 100 to 200 bucks. Now, am I to purchase this board, or should I say, will I consider to purchase this board? I would definitely will, okay, as compared to the predecessor. When I do the content on the predecessor, I did list out all the functions and the cooling and such, but somehow this board does not really impress me that much. Some of you might like the the design on the crest over here is big and such. It looks very elegant as compared to this. This is very subtle, but the thing is, I like this more. I will tell you why, and other features that I like this board that convince me that if I am to purchase this board, right, I won't hesitate at all as compared to this. I have a lot of holdback to purchase this board based on the fact the price tag is similar to the Dark Hero. Now, as why I will purchase this board, first of all, as mentioned to you, if you want to talk about aesthetic, right, the design of it, take a look. These are all CNC cut, inclusive of the crest itself. These are the attention of details that I will like more compared to the imprint as compared to the predecessor. And another thing is that the functionality on all the cooling in this board, inclusive of the RAMs itself. Okay, the RAMs are not cooling, it's more like the total optimization on the current itself. Now come to the cooling. The M.2, okay, this is toolless as compared to the predecessor. And back to cooling, this is more than enough to cater for cooling. See the bottom section, and especially for the top section where you place your Gen 5 M.2. Now this whole chunk of metal, it is not just for show. So let me just take the other As you compare to the predecessor, right? See, this is so much beefier as compared to the predecessor. Now, the predecessor does function properly, as in like it has a pin stack and such, and these are the imprints of the design itself. But on the Dark Hero, this is even better, because it does have a vapor chamber that links up to the pin stack at the bottom. And all these gaps over here, right, as mentioned to you, this is not just gaps, but having the chain of pin stack, which is on V shape, connected to the vapor chamber. And as witness, when I show you the benchmark, right, take a look at my Gen 5 drive that's running. Most of the time, if you do find me doing reviews on motherboard, right, my M.2 drive will hit above, 45 degrees Celsius and such, and it's of Gen 5. But this, right, fantastic. Controller 35, it's around 37 to 41 degrees Celsius. Else for the NAND, right, it never hit above 45 degrees Celsius. So this is proven. Not only that, the design of it, right, as mentioned, I don't like imprint. I prefer cuts, or should I say mold to shape. See, the Dark Hero, this is not imprint, alright, this is really cut to shape. Nicely done. Now, besides this, I am also impressed with the VRM heatsink. I was skeptic at first, but once when I run the benchmark test, right, about 5 to 6 times, I am impressed. It does able to cool down the whole, VRM section, and it able to sustain at that clock speed without any issue. It's quite consistent. And best part is that the arrangement on all this VRM heatsink together with the M.2 and the RAM slot, right, it's spacious. I don't have to worry about plugging in a beefy, or should I say a very big liquid AIO block. Not at all. And best part, I am anticipating the new version. It's already out, but I hope that Singapore will bring in that, and I believe that Asus Singapore, right, will pass it to me to do a test, where that block, right, you don't have to connect the fan cables, you don't have to connect the USB cable to control the LCD, nor do you have to plug the pump header to the headers on the board itself. Instead, all in one solution with this Pogo pins. Well done. I'm actually anticipating this. Now, last but not least, the RAM slot. The previous successor and this, right, they are using the same technology, which is the Nitro, let's see, what is it called? Nitropath technology, where the slot, right, having the pin to grip this way, as I showed you earlier, instead of having the normal way, which is this. For this, right, when it does this to my RAM, right, it has full contact, leaving it no error to lose current. And it's proven. I've run numerous time of tests on the RAMs itself, changing RAMs and such. In fact, if you to watch this video, right, I have done the ARGB 48 gig and the 32 gig and such. Those RAMs, right, whatever I plug, right, it's always lower than the SoC voltage that I've set. I've set it to 1.15 as a standard, as most of my RAMs, I know that it's able to take 1.15. And of course, you have to test the voltage using benchmark tests like the OCCT, the either 64 stability test, or using 3D Mark. All check out well. And on top of which, right, what surprised me is that, as I mentioned to you, I've set the voltage to 1.15. In most of my other board reviews, right, it will go over 1.15. In fact, it will exceed to 1.16, 1.18, or even 1.16. But for this board, right, it just pulled to 1.37 max. Okay, no, not 1.37, sorry, 1.137. My mistake, which is lower than what I've said, which is 1.15. And it just keep going. Now, lower current on the RAMs itself, right, on the SoC itself, right, you will bring down lower temperature to the components like your VRM, your processor, especially your processor, which you see is hovering you know, fantastic. It doesn't go above 80 degrees Celsius, nor is it going 78 degrees Celsius. And mind you, I'm using a old liquid AIO, and yet it can hover around 76 to 77 degrees Celsius, which is amazing. So these are the things that I like about the board. And on top of which, right, strong connection point, as I hesitated for this predecessor because it only comes with a 2.5 gig LAN port and a 5 gig port. That's all. So for this board, directly you have a 10 gig port and a 5 gig port. This is a great enhancement, especially for those of you who are, you know, located here in Singapore, right? You know that your service provider, just like myself, is having 10 gig connection, and this will serve its purposes. Then you don't have to worry, as in like I don't have to worry that, you know, like the predecessor only having a 5 gig and a 2.5 gig. I have to purchase additional device like the PCIe slot, or even to use the USB 4.0 port to cater for a 10 gig port. I don't have to buy additional devices. I just plug and play. Simple as that. Another strong point about this board is about the lane sharing. For most of the Asus board, I feel it's actually in a mess, especially the first batch of the X870E or the B850 and such, right? Inclusive of the previous Hero. But for this board, right, fantastic. All the lanes that you populated, right, be it the M.2, the PCIe slot and such, it will run at full speed. The only thing that I need to worry, right, is on the PCIe slot and one of the M.2. Now for PCIe slot, not an issue, because I'll be only running one graphic card, and that will be on full 16. Else for the second, right, I used to run capture card, but right now no longer using that. I'm using my IP KVM instead, so I don't really care about this second slot. And also another take on the lane sharing, which is pretty minor, not really that, you know, a big major thing, is the second M.2 slot. If I'm gonna use the USB 4.0, which is over here, the Type C, it will share lane with this, but I don't think I will have to worry about this, because most of the time when I do file transfer and such, right, I will not go to the back, deliberately to go to the back to plug the 40 gig transfer rate port, which is this tool. Instead, I'll be using the front. 20 gig is more than enough. So with this say, right, no compromises, I can make use of all the M.2 slot to run at full lane X4. This board is seriously well done, and again, if you question me again, will I purchase this board? Definitely. All the winners, it does perform. Okay, thermal is rock solid, able to sustain the clock speed on my, you know, high-end processor. The RAMs is running super cool. Good connection point, well done. I love that. The design, the aesthetic, everything I love so much. Now, things that I feel that they should improve on. First of all, I always complain about Asus board regarding about this. I just don't understand that why can't you just make all the fan headers, right, the 4-pin PWM fan headers, right, all to 2 ampere. And most of the boards, right, only have one header which is 3 ampere, which is the water pump for, you know, for custom water loop builders. This is something which I don't understand. If you have 2 ampere, right, as you know that right now when we use the high-end liquid AIO and such, right, those fans, right, some of them is rated as 0.5 ampere. So if you times 3, right, is 1.5 ampere. So do you think it's sufficient to actually supply? Which all these are only 1 ampere. Now, as checked with Asus support, each of this, right, though is rated at 1 ampere, right, it can cater up to max 1.25 ampere. But having the 1.25 ampere, right, it still does not enable me to run high-end, I should say performance fans, which I told you the amperage is 0.5 ampere. 3 is 1.5. 1.5 drawing a 1.25 header, right, overstress. Then I will have to get an external fan hub to do that. So this is actually one of the points that I dislike. Now, second point, for goodness sake, I know that you want to do halogram on your screen itself. Take a look. Okay, deliberately I did all the fingerprints and such. I think there are better material to actually make use of rather than this, so that it's not, you know, fingerprint magnetic. And probably, you know, it's good to supply some microfiber cloth to clean all this, especially when builders, right, build the system in, right, and when your fingerprints, right, it's kind of like, you know, not very good to look at. So this is the second part. Now, third part that I think there are room for improvement. This section where you have the halogram on the ARGB effect, it will be more practical that if you can, you know, provide this as a LCD. I know the price will be up, but as mentioned to you, right, with all these feature set, right, I'll definitely buy. With the LCD showing all the stats like your liquid AIO, the radiator fluid, the temperature, inclusive of the CPU temperature, the GPU temperature, and the fans RPM and such, it will be more practical. This is what I feel. Now, having to say this, right, there are also additional good points about this board. First of all, I can use this board to test outside the case, as there are functions like the start button, right, and the flex button, which is programmable, that I can do reset to turn off the to program it to as a reset button to turn off the ARGB effect on the rear IO. And also I've shown you can set it to a direct key. If you are in Windows, right, when you press this key, right, it will just shut off. And when you want to boot into UEFI, right, instead of pressing the power button and to hit on your keyboard delete key, right, you can just program this to direct key. When you boot it up, right, you will straight go into UEFI. Well done. And also another point, that if you have done all the configuration in UEFI and it doesn't boot up, you know that it does boot up at, stable when you use it, but all of a sudden it doesn't boot up. Instead of doing the clear CMOS, right, you can use this retry key. Alright, retaining all your configuration, you just press this, right, you will retry to recalculate, recalibrate and such, and to follow whatever you've set in UEFI. So this is one thing good. And also another point is that the digital debug LED, before it posts into Windows, right, it does act as a debug LED, as in like doing the postcode verification and such. But once after you boot into Windows, right, this becomes a thermometer to show the temperature of your processor. Well done. Overall, I would say that this board, right, is really fantastic. I am totally impressed. If you ask me the question again, okay, too bad I already have my Nova on my system. If I am to have a choice, right, if this is actually a current against my Nova, right, I would definitely get this board. It's so much mature, and you know, everything check out well. Now, some of you might argue that, hey Q, there is another board that has a LCD panel. Yeah, I know, there is, which is this, the Gracia. See, which I'm going to do a review on this. This has a LCD panel that shows you all the stats and such, and all the goodies, and having some, you know, very cute functions like the coverage, which is functionable. Okay, just a sneak peek. I know a lot of reviewers have already done this, but I just want to have a hang of this and to show you. And I believe there are much more than what. Okay, I'm proud to say this, that I have much more to talk about and to discover on this motherboard itself and to share with you. Now, speaking about all the bells and whistles, back to this board, the application of it. You have all the functionality, as in like, you know, first test the Wi-Fi signal strength and such to control the PWM using Armory crate. And mind you, if you to keep the ARGB EO system, right, to Armory crate, right, you will not be laggy. Okay, trust me on this one. And on top of which, right, I've shown you the in-house premium products like the GlideX. I totally in love with that. Okay, I don't really need to actually purchase the air server, which you see on my screen to show my mobile device, because sometimes I read messages. It's like, I know Windows have this so-called mobile link, but it's not as so functionable as air server. But for this, right, you have the glitch, the GlideX, you can do that. And on top of which, that application enable you to project out external devices like your mobile device, your your iPad, your tablet as a secondary monitor. Okay, and on top of which, you can add more monitors by by plugging the display port, which are the USB Type 4 and things like that. Fantastic. This board is packed with features, and not only this, the charging port works very fine. I have shown you how it's being charged and things like that. And if you're using laptop, right, you don't have to deliberately find another AC outlet just to charge your laptop. You can just plug to this, but make sure you plug the 8-pin EPS connector to supply the power in order for this to work as a power delivery port or a fast charging port. Alright, with this said, hope you guys have actually enjoyed what I've shared with you, and thanks to Asus Tech Singapore to provide this board. It's an honor to have this. I'm totally excited right now. In fact, I did message my my marketer from Asus in Singapore. I was asking her if I could purchase this board. That's the truth. Anyway, as I mentioned, hope you guys have enjoyed, and if you are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe. Now, don't go away first, alright? Let me finish. Do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Now, if you do like this content, right, help me to grow this channel as to click on the like button. Now, coming to the finale. Right after this, I will be talking about the easy mode and the advanced mode of UEFI. So if you want to know more how it looks like, well, stay tuned for more after this. With this said, thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye. See ya. This is how the UEFI interface looks like. There are 3 different modes. What you see here, this is the easy mode, then followed by the advanced mode, or you can see the essential mode, which is this. I'll first start off with the easy mode. Right at the top where you say English, you can set these languages. Let's say you want French. See, all these words will be in French. And you want Chinese or such, or Dutch, you will just change accordingly. Okay, I'm just going to set this to English. Then for search is in fact a search function. If you know there is a feature that's on UEFI, you can just either click here, search, or to press F. Be able to have this. And let's say, for example, you want to set PBO limits. See, you type the word, and when you click on OK, right, you will have this. Then you can set accordingly. So this is the search function, and of course the time date, you can click here and to set the time and date. Now on my left, you will see this graph. This is to show you the CPU temperature, and right at the bottom there is additional info like the motherboard temperature, the processor that you're using, and the RAM of speed. By default, what is it running? No, this is actually the clock speed, base clock, and the memory that you're using. You can set expo or on or off. At the center, you have this quick settings, whereby Easy Flash is meant for you to do your BIOS update through this interface. Okay, I'm not going to do this. Then besides this, right, you can do the rest, which you have the sub menu. So when you hover it, right, you will show you what's the description and such. So as you scroll down, right, see there are more. I'm not going to do anything much here, just to show you. And over here, this is the status of your DIMM slot. Your first DIMM and second DIMM, if it's been populated, right, you will list over here. Or you have 4 DIMM slot, you will show all your RAMs that's populated. Then right at the center over here, you have the fan curve and such. You can do the manual curve and such. See, oops. Oh, you have to go into Q fan control. Yep. Then from there, you select your fan headers and such. Then from there, if you want to adjust, then probably you will need to set this. See, then you can do your fan curve. or you can do it over here. So depending on the temperature and the cycle, in fact, temperature is based on the, how hot your CPU is, then you can set your RPM to how much percent. Right, I'm just going to undo. Then right over here you can set the PWM and which source that is taking from. Let me say the okay, how this curve work is that it will detect based on the temperature, then it will pump your RPM, right? But based on which component, so we can choose either the CPU or the CPU package, right? Now CPU and CPU package, in fact, in some of the readings for temperature, right, it's slightly different. If you do choose CPU package, right, it's running hotter, right? Then you can do all this level, as in like the step down, step up, and the minimum. I mean, this is actually the minimum RPM that you want your fans to run. You can set it all the way to 200 if you find it noisy, but for me, I will set it to, okay, just to show you, see, or you can set it to and such. For me, I just set it lowest at 600, and these are all the temperature of your, see, as I mentioned to you, the CPU package is higher compared to the CPU. So what's the difference? Well, CPU package, in fact, it calculates all the dies and stack and such. Else for this CPU, right, it's just in generic, as in like average. Then you have the motherboard, the VRM, the chipset and such. Okay, then this section over here, this is whereby right now I'm actually booting on Windows OS. If you have another M.2 hard disk or SSD, right, that is running on Linux, take for example this in fact is a thumb drive. Okay, take for example this is a M.2 and it's loading default Linux. So if you want the system to boot every time when you boot out, right, to Linux, you just need to do is to hold on it and drag up and to save this profile. And when you save, right, every time when you boot the system, it will boot to Linux. If you want to change it back, come back to this location and do this. Alright, then for boot menu, right, for example, let's say I want to boot into the onto the thumb drive, you can just click on the boot menu and select what to boot. Okay, right now I'm not going to press it because once I press, right, it's going to boot either to the USB or my Windows. I'm just saying that if you want quick boot up, especially for setting out OS, if let's say this thumb drive contains the Windows OS installation, right, you can just click on this and you will boot to that interface. Then right at the bottom you have this generic help. Now for generic help, which is F1, showing you all the short keys. And if you have done all the default, if you have done all the settings over here and you find that, I just want to revert back to the factory default, you can just click here or press F5. Save and exit. Well, this will save whatever settings that you've done. Exit to boot into Windows. Okay, this is how it works. Then this is going to advanced mode and the essential mode. Now taking you to the essential mode, which is Control F7. So on the essential mode, right, on the extreme left, this is to show you the motherboard, the processor, the temperature and such. And of course this Q fan profile, you can set it. You can set it turbo, you can set it full. This is overall, right? And of course you will need to do the fine tune, as in like using the quick tune in order to have all this profile. So for me, I'll just select to turbo. Then for easy tuning, either you tune it yourself manually or you use the AI. But when you use the AI, right, please read the instruction, okay, before you set the AI. Then all this are the expo profile, your RAM timing, your CPU ratio and such. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just telling you that you can set over here. Then these are the RAM status on the DIMM 1 and DIMM 2. Then for Boost Pro, now what's the difference between this easy system tuning? This is overall, it will just, the whole system will just optimize by itself, be it your RAMs or your processor and such. But for this Boost Pro, right, this is meant for your X3D processor. Okay, you can do the cache boost, you can do the game boost, you can even do the X3D core, you know, preset and such. Not going to touch this. Then again, you have the boot priority. As mentioned to you, if you want to boot to Linux, take for example the second M.2 is for Linux, right? You can just pull up. Okay, right now I'm just going to leave it this. In advanced mode, before I talk about the subcategory over here, the top and the bottom section, right, is almost identical when you're having easy mode or the essential mode. Let me just show you. For the top, it's the same. Else for the bottom, right, might be slightly different. This is advanced and this is easy. See, this is longer. Else for the top is the same. Even if you toggle to essential, the top will be the same and bottom will be slightly different. Now back to the advanced mode. Now, as mentioned before I talk about this, right, I like to emphasize on the right hand side where you see all the stats. It will show you the CPU frequency, the temperature, and all the voltages and such over here. The things that I want to highlight is the prediction section. Under this section, right, is very useful. Especially those of you who actually do overclock, right, you know that individual processor will have unique bin, as in like good bin, bad bin and such. How do you see it is good or bad? Well, based on the SP, which is known as the silicon prediction. Now, the best bin is up to 130, the score, which is the average is about 118, 119, or even better 122 and such. And what does this dimming count means? Take for example, this bin is actually 118, and in order to run, it's able to run at 5.169 gig with this voltage, okay, 1.238. If this SP is up to 125 or 130, you might even able to run a higher clock speed, which is 5.2 or 5.3. We at a lower voltage, which is maybe 1.19 or 1.2 instead of 1.238. So that's what I mean by focusing on this section to tell you that, you know, this is very important so that you know that what kind of binning you have. As mentioned to you, the max SP is 130. So if you have 120 or 123, right, take a look at the B for this clock speed. So that will tell you roughly that how much you're going to tune on your B core. I will first start off with the My Favorites. This folder here contains all the features that you often use. Okay, for example, let's say when you're doing all the tuning and such, right, on Extreme Tweaker, let's say, okay, under this DRAM timing control, where you often set this, right, the U clock equal to M clock, which is 1:1 ratio. Now, you can't add them into favorites this way. You will have to press the F3, okay, then look for the subcategory. So let's say Extreme Tweaker, and you know it's under DRAM control. Okay, then over here, right, these are the things that's being favorite, as in like, you know, placed into favorite folder. So we need to expand this and to look for the DRAM. Looking for the U clock div1 mode. So with this, right, at the side you have this plus. So when you plus it, right, see, it will appear over here. So when you do this, right, once you exit, going back to favorite, you'll see that right at the bottom, okay, you have this. Okay, I hate this. Okay, see, you have this U clock div1 mode. To erase this off, right, you can't do it here. You will have to press F3 again, then look here at My Favorite and Shortcut, where it says the U clock DIVF mode. You just click on the minus sign and you exit. And when you exit, right, back to the My Favorite folder, see, it's gone, no longer there. Now, for some reason, I don't really like the My Favorite function on Asus motherboards because it's kind of like troublesome. I would prefer that, you know, on the fly, whereby other motherboards, right, when you select on the certain item, right, either you press the F3 key or the plus key, it will add into favorite. But for this, right, you will have to go through the F3 menu, okay, to select. I guess it's actually up to personal preference. So this is actually how you set my favorites. Coming to the main, where it shows you the system info, the BIOS version, and such, okay, with the processor, the base clock, and such. Then right at the bottom, right, you can set the languages, you can set the security, okay, administrative password, whereby let's say you have siblings sharing with your, sharing the system with you. You don't want them to touch your UEFI. You can set the administrator password. And in the event, if let's say you allow them to do their own UEFI configuration, you can set a user password. So it's actually a different set of profile. So you have the overall control if you set administrator password. As for your siblings, right, giving them a user password, right, when they do the UEFI configuration, it's only for their preference. Now, next will be, okay, did I miss out? Okay, correct. Next will be the extreme tweaker. Okay, let me just go to the main page. Now, on the main page itself, under extreme tweaker, you can set your expo profile as your RAM's XMP profile or the expo profile. Okay, for some reason, my RAMs, I know I have XMP profile, but for this motherboard, right, it only takes in expo profile. Okay, so do take note on this. If you're using XMP profile RAMs, right, probably you need to do manual tweak. So do take note on this. Then of course you can do this. All these are the settings of the RAMs. Your memory frequency max, I know, is 6000, or should I say the mega transfer is 6000. Then for 6000, the F clock frequency will be 2000, okay, through calculation. For more details on how to do the manual configuration, because normally these are all auto, and the reason why I've set it to this, right, is because I want the system to boot faster. But most of the time these are all on auto. Then you have the DRAM timing control. Okay, so these are the things that you can set. Like as I mentioned to you, I like to run my RAMs on 1:1 ratio, and I know that my RAMs is capable of doing it. That's why I set it to U clock equal to memory clock. Else, for any RAMs that is not running on 1:1 ratio, right, take for example you're running off 6800 or 7200, most likely you'll be using 1:2 ratio. Then you have all this gear down, refresh, etc. This I will just leave it. Then these are the timings that you can set manually if you want to. Okay, just to show you. This is mainly for RAM. I would say that RAM tuning, in depth into RAM tuning. Then you have this DDR turnaround time. See, all this you can set. DDR PMU training. The processor, ODT, PO3. Now, as mentioned to you, this board is catered with a AI chat. So if you wouldn't understand certain things, right, you can take them down and to ask the AI chat or the AI analyzer application, which I showed you earlier. Then you can set all this. Alright, these are all the DRAM timing. Alright, now back to the main of extreme tweaker. Next will be precision boost overdrive. Now this precision boost overdrive, when you set it, right, it's kind of different. See, you have all this mode over here. If you are unknowing how to do the PPO limits manually, right, you can do it by preset, which is over here. You can disable it, you can enable, you can enhance, you can set it to manual, just like the advanced mode that I'm going to show you later, or you can set the eco mode. So this is just a one-click function where you can tune. Okay, this is the main page, right? Main page of extreme tweaker. If you select to precision boost overdrive, See, you can select over here, and these are the rest of the settings you can do too. Curve optimizer, curve shaper, and etc. But normally for advanced user, right, we will not use this precision boost overdrive under the extreme tweaker. Then below are the core tuning, or should I say your CPU core tuning and such. The ratio, cause the ratio itself, right, you either can set it to AI or you manually set it. For manual tweaking, right, normally is 43 base clock. So if you want to let the processor to run not on the base clock, but you want to force it, you can set. Okay, what I mean by 50, it means to say you want your CPU to run at 5 gig, always at 5 gig base clock. But for me, I'll just leave it to auto. Then you have this per CCX ratio and such, so you can set, up to you. Gaming adaptive CCD Parker, you can enable, disable. This is mainly for your games. AI cache boost. Now, as mentioned to you, all this, the AI cache boost, right, is meant for your X3D, processor and such. GPU boost, and you have the DG plus VRAM. Okay, this is how you do the load line calibration. See, you have all this. But I would advise not to set above level 3, because if you set above level 3, right, you are pushing a lot of voltages. But most of the time I just set it to auto. This is for CPU load line calibration, and there is I believe there's a load line calibration for another stuff. Okay, probably it's actually not here. Segment 2. Okay, I'm not too familiar with the load line calibration on ASUS, because for most of the other rest of the motherboards, right, you will have load line calibration for the CPU and for your SoC, which is your RAMs. But these are things that you can set. Next, you have the performance bias. As in, like, let's say you are running this to test, to challenge on Cinebench, R23 and such, you can use this. Okay, Tweaker's Paradise. When you click on this, right, there are more things to tweak. See the block, the base clock 1, base clock 2, etc. You can set. These are all into details, just to show you, which I will not touch. Core flex. So these are the things that you can set to. These are all precise timing that you can do. Alright. AI features, just to tell you that what is going on. Okay, these are the, okay, above are all the stats. Below, right, you can set this, keep training, stop training, etc. Up to you. Recalibrate cooler. Okay, I'm not gonna do that and such. Okay, these are all based on AI features. Now, under this section, this is where I will set the voltage itself. If this is not a 16, this is not a 16 core 32 thread, right, probably I would say around 8 core and such, right, I will do the offset manually, which you can see over here. I'll do the offset, then having a negative sign, and for most motherboard is okay to run at this offset value. But since this is a 9950X, right, I will just leave it as auto, because it's more power hunger compared to a 8 core. But all the motherboards that I run, right, I will tune down the SoC voltage, which is the communication between your RAMs and your processor. Okay, which you will see that some definition, right, on the RAMs, which is the IMC, communicating with the processor, which is the PCIM. So with this here, right, I will normally pump at 1.15, because if you to set this as auto, right, when you run Cinebench and such, right, the SoC voltage will be 1.21, 1.25, and it's a bit too high for me, for my liking, as I wouldn't want to degrade my RAMs too much. I mean, as the time goes by, alright, it's not instant, but it's just the duration of the degradation. I mean, most of our stuff, right, in our system, right, will degrade over time. But I just want to prolong the lifespan, so that's why I set the SoC voltage to manual mode and to this 1.15. Okay. Then other than that, this I will not touch. A lot been saying that for DIO, right, you can set to 1.35 and such, but I find that most of the time when I set that, right, my RAMs couldn't take it. Whatever King Bang RAMs that I use, right, will not be able to run 1.35. Okay, it require a minimum of 1.4. So with this area, I just leave it this as auto. Everything is auto. Now, high DRAM voltage mode. If your RAM is capable to run, you can just enable this. Not an issue. Okay. If not, you just disable it. If it's unstable, or best is actually set it auto. So the rest, I will not touch. Some of you will just set, but for me, right, I will not touch this. I'll just leave it as it is. So this is the rest of the timing. Advanced memory voltage. Okay, you can set all over here. Alright, now done with the extreme twinkle, coming to advanced. You have all this, you can set trust computing, just to show you. These are basically all the security stuff on the storage device. The FPPM configuration, normally I will not touch this. You will need to have this enabled in order for you to install Windows 11. These are the prerequisite. Okay, UEFI variant protection. Okay, you can enable with a password, etc. Then CPU configuration. Okay, these are things that you can set. PCIe subsystem settings. This is where you do the resizable bar, but by default these are like this, which is enabled. So I just leave it. This is good if you're running RTX graphic card or NVIDIA graphic card. Then USB configuration to set legacy or such, you can come here to control. Okay, just to show you, see, you can enable this, disable this, up to you. These are all the ports that's on the motherboard. If some of the ports that you don't want to use and you want the system to boot up faster, right, you can disable them. But I don't think anybody will come and touch and to stop the ports itself, because you need to know which port is which port. The thing is, alright, then next we have the network stack configuration, the NVMe configuration. Now this is M.2, but what it does is in fact quite simple. Do a self check and a self test. For me, I have installed the Bywin X570 2TB. This is a Gen 5 NVMe. So when I do this, right, you see, you can do the self test, etc. Up to you. You can extend the test, but by changing this, right, you will take a longer time to load to Windows. So I will just leave it as it is, just a short test and such. Okay, then you have the hard disk and SSD smart information. Now this is very important. Okay, if you have a device over here, right, you can set the hot swap and such. Oh no, sorry, correction. Now for this, right, will give you the information of your SSD or your 3.5-inch hard disk, whether does it have the smart, I mean the technology known as smart on or off. Next, you have this SATA configuration. Yes, this is more important, whereby let's say you populated a 3.5-inch or a 2.5-inch hard disk, right, especially for 2.5-inch hard disk or SSD, you will need to disable, you will need to enable some stuff. If you want to just remove off your SSD, okay, the 2.5-inch SSD while the system is loading, right, you will need to set over here. Take for example, let's say you plug the SSD on this, okay, oops, set the hot plug to enable. So when you do this, right, on Windows itself, you can eject. You can press on the eject on the USB icon on the lower right at the taskbar and eject the drive, and you can just pull it out while your system is still running. Okay, you have the AMP configuration. These are the saving mode function and such, and this I will just enable because I use wake up on LAN, so that's the reason why I will enable this. Onboard configuration. Now, things that you do not need, you can just turn it off. Take for example, for this onboard audio, right, I'm not using it because I'm using an external audio interface, so I just disable it. By disabling this, right, you will allow the system to boot up faster. And these are the LAN connection. Okay, if you're running on NAS and a landed if you're running your NAS with one port and the other port for internet, which is the wired RJ45 cable, right, you leave it enabled. If you do not run one of them, right, take for example, you just want to run a 10 gig, your service provider is allowing the 10 gig transfer rate, and the other port, if it's empty, right, disable it. Okay, reason for this, right, as mentioned to you, whatever that you do not use and you disable over here, you will allow your system to boot up faster. Alright, so these are the onboard thing, and you can set your bifurcation mode on all your PCIe slot. This is PCIe slot 1, slot 2, and such. Okay, right at the bottom you have all this. I'll leave it as it is. Alright, you can set it self mode, etc. up to you. You gotta play with the system on your LED. Let me say, this is actually got to do with your ARGB effect on your rear IO. Okay, and as for Windows dynamic lightings, you can enable this, but somehow for this motherboard, there isn't drivers for this, so you can't trigger the Windows dynamic lighting within Windows 11 itself. So just leave it disabled. But I believe in some time, in a later stage, right, since this board is pretty new, later the stage, as in, like, probably a few months or so, they might come out with a driver so that you can enable this to make use of the Windows dynamic lightings instead of using the Aura sync from Armory crate. Q-code LED function, I don't think anybody would want to turn this off. Okay, you want it to have auto. Now what it does is that during the RAM training cycle, right, it will do the pre-post code and such, as in like the digital will run, having like 15 to verify, C5 having memory readings error, or 00 having CPU errors and such. That is the digital debug LED. Okay, and when you set it to auto, right, once after it passed the BIOS BIOS postcode, when you load into Windows, right, that digital LED will become a thermometer of your processor. Okay, I'll just leave this as auto. Then you have this sleep mode. Now, for my take is that I normally do not like to turn off let my system to sleep or to hibernate, cause from hibernate mode or sleep mode to active mode, as in like you shake your mouse and your system wake up, right, there might be a certain spike in current and such. I do not really like to practice that. So if I am with the computer, make sure that I'm using the computer. Even though I'm away from my computer for a while, right, I'll still leave the computer on. And when it comes to the time whereby I totally do not use it, right, I'll just shut down my machine. Okay, this is my style. Then all these states you can set the alternate mode on the mode switcher. Then this the rest. Okay, PCIe speed link. Now you can manually set this too. If you know that your PCIe first connection, right, or the first slot, right, you're running a Gen 5 GPU, you can set this to Gen 5. Alright, same goes to your M.2. You can predefine them. So these are all the M.2s that you can set. I would advise that, give it a try to set manually. Though right now it's actually auto. I know that my graphic card, which I didn't plug in, which is Gen 5, then my M.2, the first slot, right, is Gen 5. because the ByWin X570 is a Gen 5 drive. Then the rest I'll set accordingly if I did populate. Reason to set this, right, because you're telling the system bypass, do not verify at all, because I'm telling you that, you know, I'm running on Gen 5, I'm running on Gen 4. So you don't have to bother to re-verify everything. Because if you set to auto, right, you are asking the system to go and, hey, look out yourself, okay, what am I using? This is what it meant. Alright, so that's all for advanced. No, not all for advanced. Back to the main advanced menu. Earlier on I was showing you the onboard. Next you have the NB configuration. So this got to do with your graphic card. You can set primary to detect the PCIe. If not, you will just go into integrated graphic. In the event you don't have a graphic card and you're using the integrated graphics on the processor, right, you can set this to IGFX. Okay, but most of the time I'll just leave it this way. The rest I'll just leave it not touch. Okay, AMD CBS. This is normally set for advanced user. Okay, things like the NetBio, which is related to your graphic card, you can set over here, or your audio configuration and such. Okay, I'm not going to go into details, but probably can show you what's inside all this. See, if I'm going too fast, you can pause. Alright, you can pause, rewind, and pause to the area. The rest, right, okay, probably I should start with, okay, I go again. AMD CBS. This is the whole interface. You can set all this C-state control, which some of you will do disable. Okay, you don't want the processor to go on idle. You just want full power to it. Okay, things like that. Then these are stuff that you can do. You can do CPU command option. This is how it looks like. I wouldn't have a clue what this is, but just to show you the interface. Okay, I'm going slow. Alright, back to the top where you have two more over here, the prefetcher settings and the core watchdog. Next will be the DF common options. Okay, you have the memory addressing, ACPI, and these are the rest that you can set. UMC common option. You have this DDR options. Whoa, much more. Okay. Oh, interesting. What's this? Okay, I've not come to this menu before. Probably these are the configuration, advanced configuration that, you know, advanced overclocker will make use of. So I'm just showing you all the listed category over here. Again, if I'm going too fast, you can pause and have a look. Because some of you have asked me, hey Cleo, in certain area I'm not shown, you know, for my motherboard review. Some of you advanced user, okay, really advanced, much better than I am, you ask me questions like, hey, do you have this, do you have that? And sad to say that all this board being loaned, right, I have to return, so I can't answer you. So I will show you over here. Next will be DDR controller configuration. You have this DDR power option, the refresh management, okay, DDR RAS. Alright, I wouldn't know what this is for. Oh, ECC configuration. Alright, these are mainly for server grade RAMs if you have them. Then the DDR security, you can set the addressing options. Interesting. Training options. You have the DDR memory MBIST. I have no clue what this is, but just to show you guys. Okay, there's one sub menu over here. I don't think I can click on it. Yep, it's grayed out. The DDR memory features and the turnaround time. Alright, that's all for this Now back to the main thing. Okay, I'm done with this. Net BIOS configuration, as mentioned to you, these are the configuration for your graphic card and your audio. See, this is for the integrated graphic. Out here, right, this is meant for your graphic card. If you know how to tune it, then this is to control your onboard audio. So this is under NBO common option. You have SMU common options. Now, I often will use this because for X3D processor, right, there is this section called CPPC to either set to driver or to cache. So these are the things that you can control. But as mentioned to you, right, the CPPC is not listed over here because this is not an X3D processor. So if this is an X3D processor, right, I would definitely make use of the CPPC mode, which will set either cache or driver. So for me, right, workload, I will set it to cache, but for gamers and besides game and leisure content creation and such, right, it's best to set to driver. Okay, can't show you here, so sorry about this. Didn't plug in an X3D processor. So these are things that you can do. Okay, under the CBS, then you have the AMD PBS. Right, more functions, graphic features, the USB configuration, and that's about it over here. Now, this is the part where we will use for advanced user, which is the AMD overclocking. So when you click on this, right, when you click on accept, for me, my style, the rest I will not touch. I will only touch on SOC underscore uncore OC mode. Okay, but be whether I'm okay. Before I show you my style, these are things that you can do configuration. The manual CPU overclocking. All right, the core count you can set. Okay, not gonna touch this. Okay, not gonna touch this. So these are the things that you can do. Reason being, right, when I click on this, right, if I click on add again, right, it might just run and detect something. Okay, that's why I keep on pressing escape. But these are things that you can do. Then next will be DR and the Infinity Fabric timing. Again, you can set. See, there are too much down here. All right, guess what? I'm not gonna go through everything because it's very tedious on the advanced overclocking mode. But just do know that these are the things that can be done. So for advanced user, right, well, purchase this board. Alright, so sorry about that. I just wouldn't want to, stretch the time too long. Now, over on this advanced, the AMD overclocking manual, right, things that I will set. First thing I'll do is the SOC uncore OC mode. I'll make sure that this is enabled. This got to do with the Infinity Fabric of your RAMs communicating with your, your processor, and to make sure that it runs at optimized profile. Okay, as you can see here, to run at their maximum specified frequency at all times. So this is the thing that I will set. Oh, by the way, when you run this, right, there won't be any power power saving stuff. Okay, it will just run full on with the current provided to the RAMs or to the to your integrated graphic. See, it's actually written over here. So do take note on this, but it's just by a bit. Okay, saving just by a bit. So I rather have my RAMs and my integrated graphic on the processor, right, to run at the speed that is allocated, rather than having to step down, then pump again, step down. That will even do more wear and tear to your to your RAMs and to your integrated graphic. So that's the reason why I've said it this way. Well, some others have different take. They might say that, oh, the technology is so advanced, so we can afford to have this as auto. Okay, when you want the performance, push the current. When you don't want the performance, you will push down the current. But for me, right, okay, old-fashioned thinking, I don't think that is the way. I'll just leave it as enable throughout, consistent. I like consistency. Next thing I will do is the precision boost overdrive. Over here, right, I will set the okay, by default it's actually auto. Some of you just enabled, or some of you worried, and a lot been telling me that, you know, they worry that the processor will just blow, you just disable. Anyway, I will set to advanced. For the PPO limits, right now it's actually on auto, but most of the time I like to set manual. And based on the default of this processor, which I know is, you know, it's at 200 watt. Now, why am I pumping so many zeros? If I were to put 200 on the PPT, right, take a look, this is milliwatt. That's the reason why I place 3 more zeros. Okay, TDC will be 162 ampere, and for the EDC will be 225 ampere. Now all these are actually in my brain, so that's the reason you know, why I can configure it. Precision boost overdrive scaler. Yeah, tons of the internet out there, or should I say reviewers out there, my goodness, telling your viewers to set manual and set it to times 10 x10, sorry, 10x. You're gonna kill your processor. Take a look at this. Override the AMD default silicon health management, right, to potentially achieve higher sustained frequency under CPU load. Meaning to say you're pushing the voltage, the V-core voltage, to your processor. And as you know that electronics, the hotter you run, right, and the more current that you pump, right, the wear and tear is even more. Then that will degrade your processor in the long run. I wouldn't want to kill myself. I wouldn't want to kill my processor. It's either I set it to auto, or on the safe bet, just set it to 1x. Okay, minimum voltage but perform above average. This is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, I set this to auto. And for this CPU boost clock override, something which I don't understand, is why just that plus 200, you know, make you so excited. See, a lot will just do this. As on my PPO limits configuration, right, if you have gone through that on the various board, right, I will not make use of this. Reason being, right, by pumping 200 megahertz, you're drawing so much current, you know, CPU power, and at the meantime you are pushing the thermal on the processor and such, and it's just by 200 megahertz. Let's say, for example, for base clock of this processor is 5.7. Just by adding 200, right, the base clock is, I'm sorry, not the base clock, the maximum boost clock is at 5.7 gig. And if you put 200, right, it will run max at 5.9 gig. From 5.7 to 5.9 gig, right, it's only by a fraction. You can't really feel it. So why do you want to overstress your processor, which I don't understand? And it's taking up more power, heating up the processor, and you have to, you know, pump with a better cooler and such. I find that this is redundant. So that's the reason why I just disable it. But of course, if you want, you can set it. Platform thermal throttle, normally I'll set it to manual and to set to 85 degree. Okay, or you can set 90, up to you. In fact, most of the time, besides, my usage, I will do it this way. So what it does is, let's say I set to 85, right, the system will pull whatever configuration that I've done to it. It's like, you know, setting all the PPT, TDC, the curve optimizer and such, which is below. Okay, these two. Once my CPU reaches 85 degree, right, it will just cool down. It's like it will not push any further. So this is actually what it meant. So it's either you set it auto. In fact, most of you will set it to auto. Leaving this, right, is perfectly alright. But on auto, right, it will only pull up max up to 95 degrees Celsius. Okay, that's what I have experienced. Then next we will have the GFX curve optimizer. Okay, which I will not do. What's the point of tuning the integrated graphic? Then next will be the curve optimizer. As you can see here, since this is a 9950X, right, I will use this configuration. Okay, a safe bet. A lot, I know that you would pump, 30, 40, etc. I think that is nuts. Because why do you want to stretch? It's just like an elastic band. You pull to the extreme and you run for a prolonged period of time. What will happen to your elastic band? It will become less tension, and that will cause instability. So that's the reason why even if I were to stretch, right, I stretch it moderately. Because back in those days on the 5000 series or the 7000 series processor, right, the max is until 30, which is this. So I put in between, which is 15 max. And for the second CCD, right, I put it to -10. Okay, -15 and -10 is always my configuration for 9950X or the 9950X 3D. If you are using 8 core like the 9800X 3D or the 9700, I will set to all cores and having a negative value, and this will be 20 max. Okay, and I'll not touch, because for lesser core count, right, it's easier to tweak with the magnitude 20. Okay, all core -20 together with the curve shaper. But for dual CCD, right, it will be much more difficult. So that's the reason why I don't set the high-end processor, right, to these figures. See, I won't do this. Instead, I will just lower it down, giving it some slack. Okay, curve shaper. Now these are the things that I will set. Okay, these are the standards with all the three high frequency. The frequency, mid frequency, which is all -15, high frequency, which is all -10. Okay, for those of you who actually follow me right throughout when I do the benchmark, right, these are all my configuration. For the max frequency, these are all -5. Okay, for more information about this curve shaper, if you want to know more, right, check out on Skater Bencher. You can search on YouTube. Okay, just look for Skater Bencher. Probably I'll just leave the URL in my description. You can click on it to find out more about what is curve shaper. Okay, this is done. So this is throughout the advanced, or should I say the AMD overclocking, which is this. Now coming to monitor, well, this is the section, okay, I'm talking about this, where you can see the temperature of your processor and such. Okay, it's listed over here. You can actually ignore if you don't want to see the temperature, but I don't think anybody will do that. Fan speed monitor. Okay, this is whereby it will show you the RPM of all the fans being plugged on your motherboard. Right now, I only have my radiator fans. Because it's an open bench, I didn't do in a case. If you do inside the case, right, you will have case fans, so it will populate all the RPMs over here. Oops. Voltage monitoring. Your CPU, your CPU, your RAMs and such, the 12 volt, the 5 volt, and the 3.3 volt will be listed over here. Okay, this is telling you that how much is actually drawing currently. Alright, it's just a monitor kind of stuff. Then you have the Q fan configuration. Okay, see, I reset my radiator fans to be on turbo and such, monitoring on the CPU. No step up, step down level. I'll just set it to 0 with the minimum run of 600 RPM. Okay, then for this chassis fan, right, these are the chassis fan header, which you have total, I think it's 4 if I'm not wrong. Oops. See, chassis fan 1, chassis fan 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so these are, they have categorized in a very nice way. So at the top over here, right, this is meant for your CPU, which is either you plug it with the air cooler fan or the liquid AIO radiator fans. Then right at the bottom, right, you have this chassis fan, which is meant for your case fan. And the next section, right, which is this section over here, these are your water pump. Okay, now why do they have two? Well, this water pump here is located below the I would say below the motherboard, where the front IO panel is. Else for this AIO pump, right, is located just beside the CPU underscore fan. Okay, so it's all set properly. So this is actually what it meant by setting the configuration. Okay, this is wrong, should be full. Now for pump, normally I run full load if it's not noisy. Alright, so this is actually monitor, done with it, nothing much else to see. Next will be the boot. For boot, you can set this, the CSM module. Now, if you are playing Valorant, you will need to come to this boot section, set to secure boot, and to set this secure boot mode to custom. Then you'll be able to play Valorant. But when you set to this, right, in future, let's say you want to reformat your hard disk, or you want to, sell off your M.2 and such, right, and you need to wipe the hard drive or the M.2, make sure you come back here before you do the wipe or format. Make sure you come over here to set it back to standard. If you're gonna leave it as custom and you wipe and you format, right, you might not be able to use the drive at all. You will ask you certain weird kind of like, give me your recover key or something like that. Alright, so take note on this. Okay, you have the boot configuration. Now this boot configuration, right, is all the fast boot, action and such, which I will not touch. Some of you will just, disable certain things over here. Okay, next will be the boot sequence. As mentioned to you, is just like the, okay, this one, okay, this is the wrong one. Yeah, it's just here. Okay, just moving this up and down. So having said this, right, you can just select over here and to boot. Let's say you want to boot your Linux, you click on this. The second boot drive will be your OS. Alright, so same as you want to go Windows, and this will be Linux. And boot override, if you understand when I mentioned to you, right, okay, press F8. Okay, sorry, this one, boot menu, press F8. When you select it, right, the system will just boot to that drive. Okay, this is actually what I meant with this. Oops. With this, okay, when you select it, it will boot to that drive. Okay, tools. You have Easy Flash, flash your BIOS with the latest BIOS version. Then the BIOS rollback, this is very important, whereby when you use the BIOS flashback button at the back, right, when you trigger that during the power surge or break of power, when you're flashing the BIOS halfway, right, this is actually the backup. Okay, high res, all this you can set. Now, ASUS erase, secure erase, this is to erase your M.2 drive. Secure erase, alright. I will not advise you to use, in fact, in most of my motherboard review, I will advise people not to use this to wipe their, secure wipe their M.2, because some of the M.2s are pretty sensitive. You will need to use its default application in Windows to do the secure wipe, because there are, okay, so far I'm encountered 2 times with Lexer M.2 and with Kingston M.2. I did the wipe over here and on another board. Okay, in fact it's 2 of the other motherboards, and I can't boot the drive. So try not to use this. I would say, are you sure? Yes. Try to make use of the software application that comes with your M.2 and to make use of that to do the secure wipe. Okay, now Flexkey, I will be showing you what, I mean, previously I did show you what the Flexkey are. When you set to direct key, right, when you press on the Flexkey, you will just, in cold boot, you will just boot directly to UEFI. Or when it's booted up in Windows, right, when you press the Flexkey, right, it will just shut down the machine. Okay, or you can set it to auto on and off just to shut down the ARGB effect on the rear IO, or you can boot, save boot. Meaning to say, when you press on this, right, whatever configuration you have done on the system itself, right, it will not load. It will just load default. Okay, this is actually what it meant. Okay, setup animation, all this you can just enable or disable. Okay, then you have the keyboard. Okay, this is pretty cool in a way that, you know, certain things that is being plugged to the motherboard. Okay, take for example the CPU fan. You click on it, right, see, it will take you to that fan configuration. It's a pretty neat thing, but the thing is that when you press escape, right, you come to this. For some reason, I do not know why, you know, when you press escape, right, you should come back to this. But instead, when you press escape, see, you come to this section. Alright, anyway, that is the Q dashboard, just to show you the interface and what are the things that is being used or populated, etc. Asus user profile. Okay, you have done all the configuration and you want to save, you can just save over here. Okay, or you can even load the profile. SPD information, these are all the JDAC on the DRAMs that's populated. See, it will show you below. Okay, Asus my hotkey. I have no idea what this is in fact. Oh, okay, toggle F3, easy toggle mode. Ah, I see. When you boot up, right, you have this splash screen that says Asus. Then after that, right below, press delete key to go into UEFI and such. You can preset all these hotkeys to show you what it is. I mean the function. So when at that splash screen, if I press F3, right, it will just hit to Asus Easy Flash. Right? If not, you can preset. You can program here for F4 boot to boot to USB, or you have CD-ROM. You can just plug, which we don't use these days. So this is actually what it meant. Then you have the auto install Asus utility. Now this is the part whereby I mentioned earlier, the Asus DriverHub. Okay, this will install instantly. Alright, see this one, and the rest will, you know, install the utilities and such. So just leave it auto. So that's all with the tool. Last but not least, exit. You either load default, as in like whatever you've done in the configuration on UEFI, right, you can just load default, factory reset. Oops. Then the rest is self-explained. I wouldn't want to talk much about it. So yeah, that's it.